9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, welcome everybody to this fabulous event about space, science, the future, rockets, and technology. I'm right now talking to you actually from the National Museum of Science Technology in Stockholm, Tekniska Museet, where we actually have a exhibition now, Moving to Mars, and it feels very appropriate. Mars is definitely the goal where we want to go with our efforts to space. Now, though, there will be some time before we get there. I think maybe 15 years, and I'm still normally an optimist. But we'll soon be back on the moon, probably in 5 to 6 years. We have the first woman and next man to walk on the moon, and this time not only to kind of put the flag there. No, we're going to build a base and starting to learn how to utilize these resources there. And we'll build a kind of a space station around the moon called the Lunar Gateway that brings things from the moon surface, which has only 1/6 of an gravity compared to the Earth. It's much cheaper. And even cheaper it will be to actually go to the asteroids and mine stuff from there and bring them to other places, also the Earth. But space is so much more than just us humans traveling there. Although it's most exciting, I always remember my 2 times to the International Space Station. But we do it for the benefit of life on Earth. On the International Space Station, we partly did a lot of science to learn how to go further in space, but also to learn of things, to do research experiments so we can improve our life on Earth. We utilize the orbits around Earth. It's an exceptionally good vantage point for communication, for observation, and for navigation. Today, everybody uses space infrastructure daily, and it would be very difficult for us if we didn't have it. We can talk to anyone on the world. We use our smartphones to go wherever we want, to just type in the address, and it shows us where to go. And it's an exceptionally fast development right now. In a few years, the number of satellites who are orbiting Earth, which are operational, has more or less doubled. And now 3,500. Actually, a lot thanks to Elon Musk company StarX, who's positioning a very dense network of communication satellites called Starlink up there. It's around 1,500 by now. And he can do that because he has built the most cheap, at least let's say the less expensive rocket to send things to space with, the Falcon 9. But that is not his goal. His ultimate goal is actually to send people to Mars. And we will go there one day. His next project called Starlink Super Heavy will be able to lift 100 tons to space. And it will be completely reusable. And his own estimate is that the price to send something to space with that could be as low as $20 per kilogram, which is about 100 less than today, which is still much cheaper than it used to be. And this is what kind of give us so many people the possibility to utilize space. And there's a tremendous possibility for many people to be on this space train, so to say, to to make a lot of business out of it. It's not only to build the rockets, which is certainly one part, but it's also to build the satellites. And building satellites is basically two parts. One is that you build the satellite itself, which is almost like a bus these days. Many companies do that. But then you build something smart to put on it, whether it's a camera or a radio or some experiment or whatever. If you have a good idea, you don't have to build a whole satellite. You just need to build this little smart thing to put on a satellite, and then you team up with another company. And all these satellites up there, they give us a tremendous amount of data. And this data is a kind of gold mine. So that's another thing. You kind of come up with a good idea how to utilize those data. And you can make a product. And that's also something where business is increasing. It used to be mainly just communication. You're sending TV signals from one part of the Earth via geostationary orbit down to another part of the Earth. But now it's so much more. And one of the problems, though, is that there's so much things up there. It sounds like a lot of satellites, maybe 3,500, will probably be 10 or 20,000 satellites in 10 years. But that is still not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is there's a lot of space debris up there. How can we handle these things? These things move around with the order speeds of the order of kilometers per second. You can have a collision between a little fragment of some old rocket, which is maybe just a centimeter big, but it collides in a satellite and it can destroy it because they may have a relative speed of 10 kilometers per second. How to handle that? If you come up with a good idea to take care of that, well, you will be really well rewarded because there's no really good idea how to take care of it. We need first to find also some regulations, but that's a work for a lot of maybe diplomats and politicians. Still, though, maybe the most exciting for many people is, the human space flight. But it is still just a small part of it. But there will be many more people who now will get the opportunity to go to space due to all this development. And this space tourism, which we've been talking of so long time, it's really taking off now. There will be one flight with the SpaceX Dragon crew in the fall, where for just non-professionals, when it comes to being an astronaut, flying to space for some days. And Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' company, is now taking off, and he will start to send 6 tourists after a while into space, come down with the capsule. But now, I'm sorry, I have to kind of run off to chair a meeting here, a board meeting at the Tekniska Museet. And I'm very glad to hand over to the moderator of the day, William Berg, who turns out we actually had a little bit of connection 7 years ago, I guess, when there was a little space particle detector, which he could borrow and did some experiments on neon from space. So, William, over to you. Thanks a lot for me. Maybe you have some question.
Hello, Christer. Thank you so much for these opening remarks. I think you really set the scene on how far we really can go and how we should utilize space. So thank you. I know you have to rush off, so I'll leave you be and really try and open up this fantastic event. Thank you so much, Christer.
Have a fabulous day. Take care.
You too.
Good luck, William, and all of you. Bye-bye. Over and out.
Over and out. Yes. Hi and welcome, everyone. I'm William Berg, and I'm so happy to be here and really got excited now by talking to Christer. And yes, he is right. In high school, my first real encounter with working with space was borrowing his muon meter. And I took it up to Åreskutan and measured the flux of muons and really trying to figure out how fast do they move. The answer is very fast. Since high school, I packed my bags and came down here to Lund to study mechanical engineering with a focus on energy technologies And in my studies here, I was part of a student project called Formula Student. And I realized the potential and the power in working cross borders with different sectors, merging technologies to really build this fantastic product, a race car. And in my final year, I was part of founding an electric racing team, and that really brought me here to Ideon. That is why I'm here today, to really see where can Ideon take us and where can Lund take us further into space. So I am honored to welcome you here today because I will guide you through conversations with probably the most experienced and enlightened people within the space tech area. In short, we will look into what are all the things that Krista mentioned. How should we go to space? How can we do it sustainably? What are the enablers? What are the barriers that we have to break? And first on to the stage, I would like to invite the CEO of Ideon Science Park, Mia Rolf.
Hi, thank you. Hey.
Thank you so much for coming here today.
Thank you. Good to have you back.
Thank you. Yeah, you've been an inspiration to me and to many for many years. So it's an honor being back here today.
Okay, we have to talk about that later, but that's not why we're here.
No, that is the question. Why are we here today?
Yes, the Innovation Days are when we actually celebrate the great innovations and the innovation capabilities that we have here in Lund. And yet last year we celebrated the innovations saving the world, and now we're looking outside of this world to actually, can we use the innovations that we create here and the system that we built here to actually help also save the space or innovate for space. And so that's what we're doing here. Is the future really rocket science or not? And we heard so great start from Krista Fuglesang, so I think we're all excited.
Yeah, I have one question. We're quite far away from where we usually think about space technology up north in Sweden. What makes Lund the best place to go further with space tech, and what really is the enablers down here?
That's a good question. And first of all, we have had centuries where Lund has been a center for science and knowledge. And the last decades, we've been managing to build up, I think, an unparalleled innovation ecosystem, starting from when you have an idea to when you start your or build your startup and make it grow, and then support the scale-up journey, and actually even when you have a great multinational company and you at one point or another discover that you need to find your next innovation curve, that we have support for that too. And together with our partners, we try to make the most of it. That together with the high level scale of diverse competences in the area, which makes us capable of solving almost any challenge. So we work with the 4 focus areas: smarter material, which is really space related, the future cities, smart cities that could be here on Earth, but could also be on Mars, as we heard. Future transportation, of course, how to get there and get home, and also health tech. I mean, space is really where we are driven by boundaries and limitations. There's literally no air, no water, no food. How can we even live there? And if we can make innovations work in space, then imagine with that resource efficiency, what we can do to save this world where we're living here. So I'm really excited that this is connected in a great way. And we also have the 400 super innovative companies here that already might be developing things that could be useful in space. So this is why. And another reason, I know. Another reason why we have to do this is because the European Space Agency, ESA, have been knocking on our incubator's door for a long time. They really want us to open up the 4th Swedish incubator here. And so we're going to hear more about that.
Yes, we will. But one final question, if I may.
Okay.
We were hearing about Elon Musk and others innovators of space. how far do you want to go into space?
Myself?
Yes.
I've always been wanting to be an astronaut since I was a small kid, and maybe this is the closest to that I've ever been. But if I want to really visionary thinking, I would go to space on a safe space trip together with some of my heroes, Elon Musk, Richard Branson. But I would also bring Barack Obama and Greta Thunberg, because I think that would be a great trip. Also, maybe Oprah Winfrey, why not? Or Angela Merkel. That would be so great.
That sounds like a party.
Yeah, that's a great party. Do you want to join?
I'm with you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll see you here back on the stage in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And until then,
good luck.
Enjoy the show. So, back to Envision Space. Our next speaker here today has probably thought and dreamed more about space than any other person on Earth. So let me introduce to you our next guest from the Warp Institute, Mathias Sundin.
Hi everyone, my name is Mathias Sundin. I'm co-founder and CEO of Warp News and chairman of the Warp Institute Foundation. And the Warp Institute Foundation also runs the Warp Space Program, and we help to find and fund private space missions. For example, on the world's first private mission to an asteroid. Today, I'm obviously going to talk about space and all the opportunities in space related to businesses here on Earth and in space, but also other kinds of edges you can get, some optimistic edges. If you know the facts, if you don't just believe the headlines, but if you know the facts, you get an optimistic edge, and I'll show you that. But before we dive into all the opportunities, I want to give you some perspective on this. And this is a unique perspective that we didn't have before. We've only had it for a few decades, actually. And it's this perspective. This is December 24th, 1968. We have seen many, many, many moon rises. But now, the astronauts of Apollo 8 suddenly saw the Earth rising. For the first time in human history, we saw Earth rising. And they scrambled to find a camera to capture this, and they thought they missed the chance, but then Earth again appeared in another window, so they captured Earth rising. And this is the world famous photography taken by astronaut Bill Anders of Apollo 8 called Earthrise. So we went to the moon and we found Earth. Because this picture has been hugely influential throughout the decades since. It was a big part of driving the environmental movement forward, because when we saw this tiny little Earth, this blue marble floating around in this vast universe, we realized, okay, this is something that is important to protect, to take care of. So you don't have to choose between Earth and space. They are combined. They go together. From Earth, we'll see space in a unique perspective that makes us want to take care of this planet and understand the importance of that. And through space, we find all the innovations we need to both go to space and explore space and live in space, but also technology that we can use on Earth to take care of Earth. Here's another photo of Earth. Can you see Earth in there? It's tiny. There it is. There is Earth, a pale blue dot. This is a photo taken by the Voyager 1 from 6 billion kilometers away from Earth. A speck of dust in this vast, vast universe. And this was also a very influential photo, and especially when you add Carl Sagan's beautiful words to it. Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. Carl Sagan, pale blue dot. Now it's time for our real giant leap. Of course, it was a giant leap to step out on the surface of Moon, but the real giant leap is going from a single planet species to a multi-planet species. Imagine humanity living on not just one, but 2 or 3 and many other planets. What a huge difference that will make. But why should we do that? Well, I think that has always been the case with humanity. We've always explored and then we've expanded. We've always moved forward. We should never move forward. I think if we stop moving forward, then we will die. We should do this for inspiration, because life can't just be going, rolling out of bed Monday morning, solving a lot of mundane problems. It should be more than that. It's easy to get out of bed in Monday morning if you think we're expanding into the universe. We have a colonization on Mars. We're living on space stations out there. So inspiration is important. But also, this will drive innovation like nothing else before. It will move humanity forward, not just in space, but here on Earth. That's why we should take this next giant leap. And so far, only a few human beings have been in space, 7 right now. And throughout time, only 569 people out of all of the billions of people have been into space. But that is soon changing. Soon it's going to be thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions and billions of people living in space. And that's a huge opportunity now for us who wants to be involved in that. It's a business opportunity, but it's also an opportunity for humanity. Because space is changing. It used to be superpowers that could do this. Like Soviet Union and the United States in the 60s. And then you had to be a billionaire, 20, 25 years ago to do anything in space, or at least have several $100 million to be something in space. But that is changing. Now, more and more, regular, normal people like you and me could be and can be part of this and joining the space community and moving that forward. And soon everyone who wants can be part of moving humanity forward into space. Now I'm going to dive into the opportunities here. I'm going to do it through what we call the optimist's edge. And that's the difference between what people believe, that is often very pessimistic. They think trends are going down, or they think new innovation, new technological progress is moving much slower than it actually is. So people have a lot of pessimism, often based on negative headlines in the news media. That's one thing, what people believe. The other thing are the facts. If you look at the facts, and that's what we do, we look at the facts. And the difference between what people believe and the fact, that's the optimist edge. If you understand something that very few other people understand, you have an edge, the optimist's edge. And now I'm going to go through very quickly some optimistic edges in space, something you can be involved with. So let's start with what people believe. And we've done a survey of people and asked them, do you think you'll ever afford to buy a trip into space? 92% says no. Only 8% says yes. But I'm going to show you some facts that probably will change your mind if you're in the no category here. It's going to be much cheaper than many, many, many people believe. The number one reason for that is reusable rockets. We're going to talk a little bit more about them very soon. But reusable rockets, of course, if you don't waste the rocket right away after you use it, it's much, much cheaper to do that. And on July 20th this year, Blue Origin was going to send up New Shepard, this rocket here, with some private citizens in it. So that's going to be the real launch of private space tourism in the world. And over the years, we're going to see many hundreds and thousands of people doing that. So we're going to use these rockets over and over and over again. And when we do something, when we produce more of something, when we use it more, we learn. We learn and we adapt. We make it more efficient, cheaper, better, all that things. And that's going to happen to rockets. So the cost of launching something into space will go down. And we also, of course, this is not an orbital rocket. We'll go into space, but not into orbit. So we need the orbital rockets, and SpaceX has those, and many others will build them in the future also. This is 2 Falcon 9 rockets landing, synchronized. It's beautiful. And this is Starman, launched by in a Tesla, launched by Elon Musk, SpaceX. Here you see another reusable rocket that is in development right now, SpaceX's Starship, that is going to take humans back to the moon, also to Mars. But it could also be used for that kind of space tourism, and actually not just tourism, it could be also actually used for traveling on Earth or near Earth, as you're going to see now. And here, the cost will eventually plummet in just a few years, probably. So let's look at the numbers here. Actually, the rocket fuel is not the most expensive part of a rocket. It's building the rocket and throwing it away instead of reusing it. But with reusable rockets, fuel cost is the thing, and it's not that high. Of course, $250,000 for a trip is a lot of money, but not compared to what you could get from the passengers in this case. So let's say this has 200 passengers. They each pay $20,000. That is, of course, still very expensive, but people pay that today to go super luxurious airplanes from New York to Shanghai, for example. So it's going to be a lot of people here. And here you will be able to go to space for like 30, 40 minutes for $20,000. So I guess a lot of people will be able to afford that or pay that. So that's an income of $4 million per trip. That is, of course, something that is interesting for SpaceX, for example. And the thing here is that they're not that they're going to make a lot of money out of this, but it will make it possible for them to reuse these rockets over and over and over and over again and learn and adapt and make it cheaper and better all the time. And if you save $2,000 per year for 10 years, you can also go to space. I think a lot of people will do that. And here in the next video, we'll show you, or SpaceX will show you a little bit how that could look. All this going to space over and over again, much more than we do today, is going to drive cost of launch down, way down. It's going to be much cheaper to send things into space. And that's an edge that most people don't understand. It's going to happen. And it opens up a vast sea of opportunities for you and for me and for everyone who wants to be involved with this. Let's go through a couple of them. One obvious thing is this means more satellites, many more satellites. Now there's only a few thousand satellites out there. It's going to be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, probably millions of satellites out there. And the satellites are also becoming cheaper and better and smarter. So we're going to use satellites for a lot more things than we do today. For example, real-time monitoring of traffic and airplanes and shipping, for example, but also of climate change, of emissions, or find forest fires or earthquakes, see very early indications of earthquakes, for example. We can use that in real time and really help us take care of Earth that way. There's also research in microgravity, for example, for new materials that it's beneficial to try that out and research that in microgravity in orbit around the Earth. We have broadband internet, and this is happening now. SpaceX is launching Starlink, and there's a number of other companies, OneWeb, for example. They're launching hundreds and thousands of satellites into space that give you broadband access every square centimeter on Earth. So imagine that. Just imagine that one thing. What will happen to humanity? What opportunities can you find out of wherever you are on Earth? You can have broadband access. Everyone on Earth can have broadband access. What will that do to humanity? Another thing is software. All these things, all the rockets, the satellites, and all the hardware around it is going to need software. So there's going to be a huge software opportunity in here. And of course, we have the hardware, and not just the obvious one like the rockets and the spaceships and all that, but for example, batteries. You need low weight and highly efficient batteries, and that's an obvious thing. If we develop that for space, we could use that on Earth. And the last thing here is analyzing data. We already have a lot of data from satellites that is not being used, not being analyzed, but there's going to be much more data in just a few years and a couple of decades that you can build businesses upon, or just build or just analyze it and understand and sell that information or share that information with others to open up new opportunities. The next optimist edge in space is living in space. So if we become a multi-planet species, we'll have to move out there. We have to find the resources in space. That opens up a lot of opportunities both in space and here on Earth. One thing is that it means more resources, much more resources, because out there on asteroids, there are enormous amounts of resources. There's platinum and water and iron, and, you name it. Everything is out there. Everything that's on Earth is in space in abundance. So we can mine asteroids and find and use that to build things in space. We can also, if needed, we can bring some of that to Earth. But we can also, over the decades, we can move manufacturing into space, and we can just live here and have a get rid of emissions here on Earth, and instead builds things in space using those resources. But it's not just more resources, it's also the use of resources is super efficient in space, because when you send things from Earth, weight is the problem. That's why rocket engines have to be so big and powerful to get it out of gravity here on Earth. So it has to be low weight. So you want to bring as little as possible into space. You have to be super efficient with everything you use in space. And of course, we can use that with energy, for example, or water here on Earth, also learn from that technology and use it here. One technology like that, an energy technology, solar cells, were developed to use in space for satellites, for example. And we now, of course, use it a lot here on Earth. And the third thing here is recycling. If you only have a finite amount of water and a small amount of water, you recycle it and you use it again. And so if we're going to live on other planets, if we're going to live on space stations, we're going to need to recycle all of it or most of it. Going to be super good at recycling that we, of course, can use here on Earth to take care of Earth. So when we expand into space, we don't have to choose between space and Earth. We don't have to fix Earth before we go to space. They are combined. If we go to space, that will give us a unique perspective. If thousands and hundreds of thousands have seen Earth from above, not just from a photo, but experienced it themselves, imagine what that will do to them. And they want to come home and want to take care of this precious little planet that we have. So we don't have to choose one or the other. They go together. If we go into space, there's huge opportunities and huge amounts of innovation we're going to do. The space will create a new economy, like the internet created a new economy here on Earth. Space is going to create an economy like that, but it's going to be much, much bigger. Not in 5 years or 10 years, but over the decades, it's going to be a huge, huge new opportunity, business opportunity for you. And I just shared a tiny amount of ideas. There are many, many more ideas out there. But remember, most ideas related to space and the future of space, no one has even thought of. And you can think of that. You can be the one who thinks of an idea like that and creates something out of that idea. And finally, remember, the sky is not the limit. I'm Mathias Sundin. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to reach out to me or any other person involved in Warp News or Warp Space program, and have a really nice day.
Billions of people in space, space recycling, space mining. I don't know about you, but I am kind of mind-boggled. So stay tuned, because we're going to hear more of how we're going to utilize space and how we can make use of all the data we're going to capture from all these satellites up there. But first, I am happy to introduce to you and another vivid space dreamer, but also with the power to enable change, from the city of Lund, Persson. Hey, Per. How are you?
Hello.
You came from first of all from working on chemistry or studying chemistry at Lund University.
Yeah.
You then moved on to taking a PhD in medicine. Yes. You were the site manager at Astra, but then you found your final role here as head of sustainable business growth at City of Lund.
Yeah, exactly.
I have two quick questions.
Okay.
First of all, first memory of space. Second one, what's your favorite material?
Okay. Well, my first memory of space, I think there was the black-white TV watching the trip to the moon. I have no exactly, but yeah,
That's
that was the first memory.
Long time ago.
And yeah, it's a long time ago. I'm not the youngest one here. And another one, I was building plastic models of rockets, the Apollo 11. I remember when I was a small kid.
Okay, so next question. I know you're a material nerd. What's the best material?
Well, maybe you suppose me to see some new material, but my favorite is flintstone.
Aha.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I used to play with those on the beach, as when you hit them and they're super sharp.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay. So why you're here today is really to talk about what is Lund going to do for space? What is Lund going to do for space?
Well, a couple of years ago there was announcement from European Space Agency to talk about the moon village, to build a moon village. Krista was talking about this buildings on the moon, and we thought this is very interesting because Lund, have all these big companies. We have the Ideon Science Park, Medical Valley, and so on. So we have the infrastructure to be a part in this building of the new space here. And so I contact the European Space Agency, and they came to Lund, and were very impressed. Especially we were looking at Max 4. It was in the construction phase, nearly finished, and also on the ESS. And suddenly we were discussing about material science, and they were not aware of was this super power facilities coming to Lund. Of course, they are working with other facilities around Europe and around the world, but I think they saw a potential in Lund. So for me, I would say there are three major parts in this. Is to look at the material science. This is the first one. And the second one is to build startups. Because I think many people here can help and be a part of the development of these different space projects. And the third one is to inspire young people to both educate in technology, in science, and all these areas. So this is the three major parts that I see where Lund can make a difference.
And you can, obviously. I was inspired to go into the entrepreneurial way coming out of Lund. But looking into space, what is the city going to do to enable this new shift? What is the city willing to contribute with?
First of all, what we can do is to facilitate, for example, if ASR Lab will come to Lund, but it should be in a way. We have already started a discussion with Max 4 and ESS, so we can work as a enabler to help this here. And we are also a sponsor of the incubator, Ideon Innovation, and hopefully we will place the space incubator at Ideon Innovation, and you will hear more about this.
Yes.
And of course, we have the schools and the collaboration with the university. The university is an important player in this part here.
That's really fantastic. Looking on the other way around, what do you believe Like we're bringing the ESA BIC, the European Space Agency's business incubation here to Lund. What does that mean for us here?
I think what we are building is a great network, because in Sweden there are already 3 space incubators. We have one in Trollhättan, one in Uppsala, and one in Luleå. And I think we have one in the north, one in the east, and one in the west. And now it's natural to have one in the south, so we can create the space node south here in Lund and Skåne.
Yes. I know that you come from different areas. You've been to medicine, you've been to technology, you're now into business development. Like, what is the success story behind Lund, and how does collaboration and how does synergies, how is it fostered here in Lund, and why is Lund again the best place for space tech?
I think it's the short distance between the different parts, between the university, between the science parks, between people. And a lot of people know each other. And of course, we have a great global network in Lund. Many people are working around in Boston, in Rotterdam, in wherever you talk. So I think Lund is a great place to have it, because we have this ecosystem that you need to be successful. You have it, of course, also the big companies, connection to the big international companies.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we have the ecosystem of Lund. We have the city of Lund in our backs, and now we're launching the ESA BIC in Lund. And our next speakers are actually the ones working with ESA BIC in Sweden and the ones implementing it here in Lund. I would like to welcome to the stage and through Zoom Jens Lundström and Maria Lindblom. Hey Maria, hey Jens, how are you all?
Hey.
Hey.
Hi there.
It's good to see you. Nice meeting you and great having you here. Jens, I know that you have a presentation for us. Do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I'm sharing. So,
Yeah.
is it live?
We're rolling. Go.
All right, perfect. So, thank you for inviting me. My name is Jens Lundström, and I manage the ESA BIC Sweden that's been mentioned before. I thought I'd kick off a little bit about what quick intro to European Space Agency and very briefly about also the ESA BIC and some news we're planning together with Lund here. So first of all, I'm working day to day as manager for Arctic Business Incubator, which is the incubator associated with Luleå Technical University. But I also manage the ESA Business Incubation Center of Sweden. And ESA, as some of you are familiar with, this is a organization on the level of countries and EUs. It has, I think, 22 members, and it was started in 1967 with actually Sweden as one of the 6 founding members. And overall, through the years, I mean, Sweden has a very strong position in space for a weight, so to speak. So we have strong research, strong innovation sector with venture capital and history of big and innovative companies. We have an innovative air and space industry, and hopefully soon we'll have launch capabilities. So it might be the first place from mainland Europe where we launch satellites. And the image you see here is the support actors that the European Space Agency has for innovation. So these are like some strange technical words, ESA BIC, technology broker, and ambassador. But in all essence, this is actually, you need to remember one thing. This is the world's largest space innovation and startup network. And ESA as an organization is moderating and orchestrating this network. And if we look at Sweden for this, today we've been running the ESA BIC from Sweden for 5 years. So we support, I think, 36 startups all in all. And the the organization that supports this is, of course, the European Space Agency, but we also have support from Rymdstyrelsen, Swedish National Space Agency, and Vinnova, the innovation agency that also supports us incubators. And at the moment, it's myself and us from Arctic Business that have offices in Piteå, Luleå, Skellefteå, and Kiruna, of course, with Space Campus. We have Innovatum in Trollhättan, which is a strong space history, and also Uppsala Innovation Center. And as Per mentioned, we have North, West, and East. So it's only obvious that we are working on to be able to announce within short that we have Ideon and Lund as the fourth node in this Swedish network of that makes up the Swedish Space Incubator. And then, of course, what is this all about? So, I mean, we are looking to support good businesses or good startups that has a need for unique competence or usage of either space data infrastructure or that are offering something to the space industry. So we're looking both for companies that are supplying to the space industry, but also startups that are using data communication infrastructure or inventions from the space industry to other applications down to Earth. We're always open to look at companies, but we only accept startups 3 times per year, and the dates and everything is on our website. So you simply apply with a business plan and the project you need our help with. You get to choose one of the incubators to work with. Once you're inside, you get access to dedicated competences from ESA or technical experts. You get to work with one of our 3, soon 4 incubators. And of course, you get also an incentive part of 50,000 euros to work on your business idea during this time. And if any details or anything more, just check out the website, Facebook page, or contact me directly. So yeah, that was briefly about ESA Big Sweden.
It is really fascinating, and thank you so much for presenting this. Maria, you're actually the one on site implementing ESA Big in Lund.
Yeah.
Where do you come from, and how did you get this fantastic role?
Yeah, I'm working at the incubator as a business coach and as a project manager. So I will be hopefully the colleague of Jens and the colleagues in this to implement and be part of the network. So yeah.
And what do you see? What is ESA Big for Lund, and what are the possibilities we can grow out of it?
I think we have a lot of startups that would be, relevant to this program for sure. I mean, we know we have a good example today in the program with Vultus presenting later, a company that has taken part in the ESA Big program. So I think that we would love to be driving this together with Jens and the other incubators and be part of developing new companies.
That's awesome. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So you're the go-to person here in Lund.
Yeah, for sure. So as Jens mentioned, you're welcome to me and to contact Jens if you have any questions or if you're curious about anything about this. So
super. Jens, I have a question for you as well. So our planet is quickly needing more sustainable solutions. How are we developing space technology to benefit the challenges we see here on Earth?
It's a very large question. I think the key aspect is that space has been and will continue to be fundamental in our sort of understanding to measure, sort of communicate, and not least visualize the changes and the like both positive and negative effects we can have with different things going forward regarding sustainability. So it's really key. Like Mathias presented, space is important for us to understand ourselves. It's that simple.
So back again at you personally. What's your background, and how did you get involved with the ESA Big?
I'm a sort of failed program that was turned to a software startup guy for 20 years, and I ended up in this as running the Arctic Business Incubator. And ESA actually contacted Sweden and the Swedish National Space Agency 5-6 years ago and asked if Sweden would be interested in operating this. So then we just set up like which are the incubators or universities that are most active in space, and it ended up being that both us, Uppsala, and Trollhättan were like had the support to engage in this offer. And it's been a fun 5 years ever since.
I can only imagine. Maria, how long have you been working on this project here?
I mean, I've been here since March, but before that, I've been a business coach and working with regional development. So I think it's just going to be very thrilling to take on this journey together with Jens and all the possibilities that's within the ESABIC network. Because I mean, as we've heard, it's a good alliance of European colleagues and startups, and it's a great opportunity for startups to join in and take part of the knowledge and the technical partners and all the assets that gives. So I think it's going to be very exciting to see what Lund and all the startups in the southern Sweden area could join in and take part of.
So what you mentioned the journey. How does this look like ahead? What's the roadmap?
We're waiting for actually some sort of answer. I think from ESA for being part in summertime, June, hopefully. So as soon as we get that, we're going to just work forward with this.
And so we already have ESABIC as this large network of startup ecosystem in Europe. So what does a company as a startup applying to ESABIC here in Lund, what value do they gain rather than other accelerators?
It's as Jens mentioned, it's financial resource, of course, and then ESA is also having a lot of technical partners that would be a resource for the startups. And I think it's a way of scaling and building your company faster and maybe more sustainable in a way that we have seen and have a couple of proofs and examples of. So I think if you're interested and have anything related to space, it's a great opportunity to choose the program to be part of.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
So what more again? You were mentioning one data generation part of startups, looking on how can we really get more data out of Earth or out of space, and the other part was really how can we leverage all of this data to use it to our benefits. What more do you see in the startups applying, and what value, what's the big vision with the ESABIC?
I mean, I think it is. I mean, as we've heard, it's just we have to imagine what this can bring to us. I mean, it's a great opportunity to see yourself from outside, as we've heard. I mean, imagine what space is to us. I mean, it's a way of we could be part of a completely other. I mean, it brings us so much value to see ourselves and to use space in a different new way. I think it's an opening up our minds in a way of thinking and understanding what we can do. So yeah.
Jens, is ESABIC the enabler of going to Mars?
I would think personally that's one of the best business ideas I've heard so far. So anybody who has a plan for that, just call me.
Is that what drives you? Is it like would you go there?
Personally, definitely. My family don't like that, but yes, of course.
What's the next big leap you see coming through, perhaps not even ESABIC, but what's the next big leap? Is it commercializing space? And what are the risks really with, going into space, commercializing, exploring, moving into space, as we've seen, humans exploring usually is not always the best thing for the places where we go to.
I mean, there's always been and will continue to be risks involved. I think still it's key for us as humans to explore and learn both about new things outside ourselves, and also by looking back at ourselves on planet Earth and what we have done and how we can affect our own future. So there are some really good aspects that we can work on here. And at the same time, I mean, I'm driven to sort of support young entrepreneurs and even people to join startups to sort of fulfill their visions and dream. I mean, that's the best part of mine and Maria's jobs. We support people and to realize their dreams.
Yeah, and the same to you. What's your space dream?
No, but I think as we've heard, I think I mean, the restriction in space is also giving us limitations on how we think about ourselves and Earth. I mean, sustainability is like a key issue here as well. I mean, it's giving opportunity to think in new ways of how we use our resources and what it means to us. And I mean, the limitation in space is giving that kind of way of doing new innovations in a way that we haven't thought about before. So I think for me it's very thrilling to address those I would say challenges, but also limitations to find out new ways of working and new ways of thinking about our resources. So that's I think it's just interesting to be part of startups and this whole community to see what kind of new technologies and new startups that we can actually put out in space and on the map for the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the interesting startups looking at space and taking it to Earth is Orbital Systems, and really doing this resource efficiency, recycling water. What is there one key technology that you think we have up in space that we should bring back to Earth now?
I wouldn't say bring back, but I think, as I said before, like the restrictions that you have to take care of is kind of interesting and learning and challenging. And also the way we monitor Earth and understand, I mean, environments and climate change is also very, I mean, it's a new way of understanding ourselves that is bringing new ideas and new innovations as well. So I think just the way and the perspective, looking I mean, getting the outside perspective is very important, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
And Jens and Maria, thank you so much for coming here. You are representing an incubator, and you really foster innovation and grow new entrepreneurs. And a clear example of that is our next speaker. And I would like to invite to Zoom. Welcome Morgan Drysdale to the future of rocket science.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you so much. It's fantastic to be here. Can people hear and see me? It's just always the good check to do.
Yes, we can hear you
All
and see
right,
you clearly.
fantastic. So my name is Morgan Drysdale. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called SkyAlert AB. We work closely together with Jens in the Arctic Business Incubator. And what we do is we have developed technology which can detect and quantify and localize leakage from the natural gas industry. So I'm going to share my presentation so that way people can see and get a little bit of a feeling for what I work with every day. So basically, SkyAlert, what we do is we develop an advanced monitoring system for detecting natural gas leakage for the European natural gas industry. I'm a master's degree student studying space technology at the Luleå University of Technology. I work together with the co-founder, Arkady Mitiko, who is a Silicon Valley-based tech entrepreneur who leads a number of startups worldwide. We've had a fantastic resource in our friend, Dr. Hans Hansen, who has been a senior advisor at Rise SciComp and a former CEO at Sweria SciComp. And then Jens himself, he needs no introduction. You just saw his presentation. But Jens and Christian are our business advisors, and they have been helping us so much right from the very start. So a little bit about the problem which SkyAlert is working to tackling. In 2018, over 12 billion cubic meters of methane, natural gas, was leaked into the EU sky by the natural gas industry. This natural gas is worth 2.7 billion euros, so it's a huge investment, just instantly wasted. And in order to prevent this waste, the European natural gas industry spent over 300 million euro, which is a lot of money. But for every €1 they spent, they still lost €9 worth of natural gas and polluted our sky with 40 cubic meters more of methane. The EU, they've said enough is enough. It's time to stop this. And they've forced the industry to commit to a 55% reduction by 2050 and a 25% reduction by 2030. If the natural gas industry was to use their current methods to reach this target, it would mean that they would have to spend 150 million euro per year extra, while still losing 1.3 billion euros worth of methane, 6 billion cubic meters, which is terrible for our planet and terrible for everyone involved. And over this coming 30 years, it would lead to them spending 4.5 billion extra euro on monitoring, while still using 40 billion euros worth of natural gas, emitting 180 billion meters cubed of this potent pollutant into our atmosphere. So what are the current methods that they use today in order to try and tackle this problem? Well, basically, they use a technique called high flow component sampling, where they take a plastic wrap and they wrap the pipeline, and then they take a little vacuum cleaner and they attach it to this plastic wrap, and they use that to quantify how much gas is leaking out of the pipeline. But when you think that there's over 260,000 kilometers of transmission pipeline and millions of elements to be inspected every year, you quickly realize that sending a few guys with some vacuum cleaners walking beside all of these, it's time consuming, it's labor intensive, and it doesn't get the job done. You know, I wouldn't want to do that. And this time and cost involved leads to only about 50% of the European natural gas infrastructure being inspected each year. So 50% is, we don't know how much it's leaking, which results in a lot of these emissions. SkySense, we've developed a product which combines a laser sensor with AI, other sensors from inside the natural gas pipelines to localize, detect, and quantify exactly how much natural gas is leaking from each individual component in the pipeline. You could mount this sensor on a drone or a UAV or a helicopter or a plane, and you could use it to get instant results straight to an online platform where you can see exactly where the worst leakages are happening, exactly how much they're leaking. It generates a report, which you can then send on to the EU or to your relevant government, Naturvårdsverket. So that way, it's just easy for you to send out the repairman to go and fix the problems. So how do we do this? Well, we start out by generating a 3D model of the infrastructure. We survey this 3D model, each component of it, using a UAV platform or a handheld sensor, the SkySense technology. And then it can paint onto this 3D model exactly where leakages are happening and exactly which ones need to be prioritized to fix. A little bit about our competition. Those who have the most similar idea, they're called micro drones. And what they basically do is they fly a drone over the site. They shine a similar laser sensor down and they get a concentration reading out. But from what you can see, you can kind of tell where clouds are happening, but you couldn't say exactly what's broken in the picture on the left. What you need is something that shows exactly where the faults are happening and exactly where the worst faults are happening. And that's what SkyAlert's aiming to do. We want to generate this actionable report, something that you can actually physically take and go, okay, here's how we fix this. We've been investing a lot into finding out what our customers think about how they'd like to buy our service, if they'd like to rent it, if they'd like to just straight up buy the sensor, if they want our experts to come around and take care of all of it for them. We're very open. We're looking forward to finding out what they're most enthusiastic about. But, you know, with such a wide market, we're trying to offer something for everyone. So we thought, what can we do in order to prevent this 4.5 billion extra euro spent over the coming 30 years? And we thought, look, we can do this in a much better way. If we had 15 million euro, then we could take this and like stop this problem right now. For every €1, this 15 million euros, we'd save 135 from leakage. and prevent 600 cubic meters of this potent greenhouse gas being emitted into our atmosphere, helping the European Commission reach their target, not in 30 years, not in 10 years, but instead in the next 1 or 2 years. Right now, we can make this happen. We think that in Sweden, we do a pretty great job here of preventing like leakage, preventing or being environmentally conscious. But even here, in a place where we consider the best case scenario, only as about 60% of the assets are inspected each year, meaning that there's 40% of the natural gas industry's assets which are just totally open, unsurveyed, uninspected, no one knows what's going on there. They spend about 1.8 million euro inspecting
Morgan?
this. Yes.
May I interrupt you for 1 second? Your camera seems to
Absolutely.
be off. Could you just double check how to, if you can turn it on?
Absolutely. Give me a second.
Thank you.
It might have. Hang on.
Sorry for interrupting.
No problem. There's a. There we go.
It's
Now?
on. Now it's on. Thank you very much.
All right, perfect. Sorry about that, guys.
No.
All right, so I'll just kick off straight back where I left off. So to inspect this 60% of natural gas assets, the industry spends 1.8 million euro here in Sweden, which means there's 1.2 million euros worth of assets just totally unsurveyed. A great opportunity for us to come in and make a difference right here, right now. Looking at the whole EU, if they're spending 300 million euro, in surveying this, and Sweden's only inspecting 60%, then we expect that, hey, look, there's 300 million euros more worth of assets out there not being inspected whatsoever. And that's a huge opportunity for us right now and a huge problem for everyone who relies upon this energy source and basically everyone in the whole world as it continues to pollute our environment. With this 15 million euro little brain game that we played, we think that we'd be able to have over 100 Sky Micros, which would fly around and survey individual distribution pipelines, 50 Sky Macros, which are long-range UAVs, which would be able to use measure the 260,000 kilometers worth of pipelines. And then, of course, we're going to need some money for business development, operations, tech development. But we think that it wouldn't take more than 3 years to make back this initial investment, which is very exciting to think about. Here are some milestones. The numbers are a little bit off, but the goals are on point. We're working on getting our patent application done in the coming 1 or 2 months, and we're very excited to be starting a pilot study with Nordion Energy down in South Sweden. I hope you guys have heard of them. Looking after that, we're going to be expanding out into every gas operator here in Sweden, and then hopefully out into the rest of the EU. And after that, you know, we go out and we tackle the world. That's what's got me excited. So going climate neutral now, preventing these emissions. Do you guys have any questions? Would you like to hear more? Maybe a little bit about how I came in here from a space conference and came down to Earth?
I'm really curious. Quickly, what made you go from looking, I know this, you came from looking on through satellites down and then moving into drones. What were the barriers that made you leave satellites?
So I said earlier that I was a student studying a master's degree in space engineering, so space has always been very close to my heart. The initial start of the idea was to use satellites and satellite data, especially from the Copernicus program. But in the end, it just showed that the resolution, the spatial and time resolution, it wasn't good enough to be able to get the accurate data that we need. But I'm so excited to see this industry develop. I've been seeing new satellites being launched all the time to try and tackle this problem. And I think that it's only going to be 1 or 2 years before we're going to be able to take the new space resources and data resources and combine them into our own verksamhet, our own work.
It's been a real pleasure, Morgan, and all the best and all the good luck going forward, taking this global. You're a very early entrepreneur, but our next guest is a more experienced and is really on the other side. So I would like to invite to you on stage Sofie Woge.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this presentation. My name is Sofie Woge. I am the founder and the CEO of Tendo. So I will talk today about what we do at Tendo, and I will also touch a little bit upon what it's like to be in a startup. But before I go into that, do I have my presentation up? Yeah. So before I go into all of that, I would actually like to start by telling you about an email that came to be a very important one. Because I decided to take a leap of faith, believe in an idea that I had, and I sent an email to NASA. And I think the presentation is in the end now. Can we just go back? Thank you. Perfect. I sent an email, as I said, to NASA. So I directed this email to Mr. Larry Toops, space architect at NASA, and I basically said, "Hi, I'm Sophie. I have an idea. Could I come to Houston and get some help from you guys?" I pressed send and waited, not very patiently, until I got this reply. So I think my heart skipped a beat. I took the computer under my arm. I ran to the kitchen to my boyfriend saying, "Oh my God, I'm going to NASA." Or more specifically, I probably said I'm going back to NASA because this was not the first time that I met Larry. During my master program to become an industrial designer at Lund University, I got the opportunity to do a research course at NASA in Houston. The mission? Get man to Mars. So quite a challenge. You're still working on that one. And I personally got interested in what happens in the human body, in space, in microgravity, and I decided to focus myself on the hands. I created a tendon-driven, motor-powered hand exoskeleton that I called Elastoglove. And Elastoglove could give strength to the astronauts when needed in space, an extra boost. It could also add resistance in every movement that you did to maintain muscle strength and fine motor skills, even in lack of gravity. When I had this concept in mind, I thought to myself, what if I would bring it back to Earth? I have family members with rheumatic diseases. There was a clear connection for me between what happens to astronauts up in space and what can happen to about 5% of the Western world population. So I decided to focus on this target group, people suffering from stroke, rheumatism, who lost their ability to use their hands because of an injury or old age. And this is simply where my passion lays. So this is where I sent that email to Larry at NASA asking if I could come back to Houston. And of course you go when you get an answer like that, and I met the most incredible people. They were just so happy to help. And this was even though that it wasn't even for astronauts anymore. I came back home, I started my own company, which was a great decision. It was just one little problem, and that was that I had absolutely no experience. I've never done a business plan. I've never done a budget, maybe for like a fancy dinner party, but nothing like this. I did not have a network nor any savings that would make the journey feel any safer. So what do you do then? Well, you go out and you meet as many people as you can. You talk about your dreams, your goals, your mission, and you seek out people that can help you. That's what I did. And my first stop was a student incubator in Lund called Venture Lab at Ideon. I went out to as many network events as I possibly could. I even called up newspapers saying, you know what, I've got a story for you. And the week after, I was on 2 different covers. I competed in more competitions than I can remember, and some went super well, and some, well, at least I got some publicity, and I walked away with a great new pitch and a new network. Since then, my team and I have taken that idea of mine and turned it into an actual prototype or a product. We have created a minimalistic wearable exoskeleton that assists the user to grip, hold, and release objects completely intuitively. My first prototype looked like this. This was back at the NASA days, and I had straws that I taped to my fingers, and I had elastic rubber bands running through them, and when I pulled like that, the hand closed. And when I had it on the back and did that, it opened back up again. Quite simple. The product works in a way quite similar to this until to this day. However, I don't have elastic rubber bands and straws taped to the finger. We have a textile glove that keeps these wires in place. And I'm not the one doing the pulling of the wires, the control unit up on the arm is. And this control unit contains, except for motors, batteries, sensors, electronics, and the whole thing weighs less than 200 grams, which is about 1/10 of our closest competitor. The product is controlled by biometric sensors that can feel the user's intended movement and use this to control the product intuitively. It can respond to a signal that the body itself does not respond to, and that is a revolutionary system for human-robotic interaction. The beauty of this technology is that it can be applied to so much more than just the hands. We can use the same tech for a foot, an arm, a shoulder, and this is where my big vision comes in. Because this means that we can bring independence back to people living with disabilities. We can help people to regain their independence, quality of life, and we can assist them to be a part of the society once again. At Tendo, we meet a lot of users. We meet them all the time, or at least we did before Corona. And one thing that we have learned is that the products on today's market are simply not made for the users. They're often big, bulky machine that takes forever to put on, is hard to learn, is mainly used only in hospitals. But by involving the user from the start, we have created a minimalistic, wearable device that's not only user-friendly, but also user-worthy. We have created an exoskeleton that has been described by medical experts as the first exoskeleton that makes sense. Today, one person that has been assisting us quite a lot is someone that we call Johan. And I would like to share his story. When Johan was in his 20s, he dove into shallow water. He landed badly and he broke his neck. His life changed in a split second as he became paralyzed in almost his entire body and is today completely dependent on the help of others. I'm here showing you a video clip of Johan's hand function after over 20 years of rehabilitation and many, many surgeries. And as you can understand, he can't get by himself in everyday life. But we met him and he tried our product, and within 10 seconds from putting it on, he could drink completely by himself. He could draw images that he learned already as a young boy and hasn't been doing since. And he could eat a full dinner by himself. All of this on his own for the first time in over 20 years. He could go to a dinner party, pick up a glass of wine, put it down, eat with a fork, everything without a personal assistant. It was such clear for us and him that that was such a liberation. Today, we are ranked as the top robotic startup in Europe. We've traveled the world, we've been on stages, and just before Corona, we were actually in Japan, where I got the honors to present our technology at our branch's World Congress, where we were chosen out of 700 applicants from all over the world. And that is all the fun stuff, all the social media things. But what is it really like to be in a startup? I'm going to show you an image of an expression that I've heard a little bit while ago that I think works beautifully to explain the situation. And that is, it's either champagne eller fosterställning. Champagne or fetal position, lying on the floor crying. And this is a beautiful description. You have the most incredible highs and the deepest lows. Everything you do is for you, by you, and you will be faced with problems that you have no idea how to solve, and in situation that seems completely impossible. But when you are in this situation, to make it a little bit easier for you, I put together something that I call Sofie's Startup Survival Guide. The first thing on my list is ask for help. It's so simple, but still, people don't do it enough. And just look at where we are today. There's so many ecosystem incubators and just friendly people out there willing to help you. Use it. Talk about it. So many entrepreneurs keep it to themselves because they're afraid that someone's going to steal it. I say the opposite. Go out, talk to as many people as you can. Tell everyone what you do. Don't tell them how you do it. Know your audience and adapt. You need to learn how to speak to investors, users, clients, engineers, and you need to understand the big picture. Create your own luck. Maybe this means that you call up the newspapers if they haven't written about you, like I did. And I often heard in the beginning that I was very lucky to meet the right people at the right time and to win these awards. And in a way, that's absolutely true. But also if you go to 1,000 events, if you apply for 100 competitions, at least some should pin out, shouldn't it? And if it doesn't, maybe reconsider your business idea, or at least the way you phrase it. Choose white wine when you mingle, because people have a tendency to bump into you, and it doesn't stain as much as red does. Beer also works. And celebrate as much as you possibly can. Just make sure, if you maybe made that scary phone call, did you find a missing USB stick or finish a pitch deck? Celebrate, because you will need all the victories you can get. Since I started this adventure, we've been on quite the journey. We had an after party with the mayor of Odense at more than one occasion. I've been on stages all over the world, in Japan, Madrid, Oslo, I think. And I've seen the joy in users' eyes when they can see their fingers move for the first time in years. I spent New Year's in my mom's basement trying to finish before a big deadline. And I spent 2 years in Odense with my whole team packed in an apartment together to save money, living the startup life, to participate at Odense Robotics Startup Hub. And just before Corona, I got the honors to actually present our technology to the crown prince and crown princesses of the Swedish and Danish household. And they seemed quite impressed. So with that said, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Sofie.
Thank you.
Amazing. I'm myself a very early entrepreneur, and I recognize myself in a champagne fetus.
Good to hear, yeah. It's the life.
It's life. So thank you for the guide. I will for sure take it with me. You came from space. You're driven and passionate, and obviously industry agnostic. What drives you?
It's definitely, I would say, the meeting with the users and the part of actually knowing that I can make a difference. And that can be in the medical field, because I actually meet people who get the joy, but also in the robotics and in all the different fields, because you can always make a difference in the way you produce, in the way you think, in the way you do your company in a more sustainable way. So for us, it's to reduce inequalities by involving more people into the society and to just bring back joy to people.
Yeah. That's truly amazing. I'm like through this journey right now, trying to call off newspapers, being accelerators,
it's
being
fun.
here. It's fun.
Yeah,
it's
it is super
much fun. It's probably the most fun ride, and it's really a ride.
It
you
is.
can be on.
It is.
Looking back, is it worth it?
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you so much for coming here. It's been a pleasure learning from you, and I'm very impressed by your journey so far. And I look forward to seeing where you will go.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Now, I would like to thank you for this first session and welcome you back in 10:25.
Hi everyone and welcome to Sigma Connectivity. My name is Björn Lundqvist and I'm the CEO of Sigma Connectivity. We call ourselves a global design house, and by that we mean that we work on the global market. 75% of our turnover comes from customers outside Sweden. We also have 6 other locations outside Lund, meaning that we work in a true global environment. We also have over 30 nationalities working in our company, so we really think we are a global design house. And by global design house, we also mean that we do perform services for our customers sitting in our own premises, using our tools, our labs, and really provide excellent services for our customers. And that is our mission. Our mission is to provide solutions that makes life better for our customers and their customers. So again, welcome to Sigma Connectivity, and I hope you will enjoy the tour.
Hi, my name is Ola Möllerström. I'm head of sales at Sigma Connectivity. So I have all the fun. I have the opportunity to meet all the great customers that we have, and then I have the opportunity as well to be proud of all the great engineering skill sets and all the amazing stuff that we deliver to our customers.
It's our Satimo chamber, Stargate 24. Here we measure antenna performance. We can measure all technologies from 2G, 3G, 4G and also 5G FR1. We can measure Bluetooth and Wi-Fi up to 6 GHz.
Hi, I'm Nadia Samson. I work at Sigma Connectivity in Lund as a mechanical engineer. The best part of working at a company like Sigma Connectivity is that we have a very big variety of customers. So every project is different and unique, and it's a challenge, but it's very fun. And you learn a lot from it. As a mechanical engineer, it's my job to ensure that all components in a product work seamlessly together. So what I like about this part of the project is that I like the physics behind it, and that you can see a product being built in front of you. So you go from having nothing and just an empty screen on your computer, and then you have a complete product at the end of the year.
Now you have walked in the doors of Sigma Connectivity. And I always say, if you have a great idea, put it on a yellow post-it note, walk in the doors of Sigma Connectivity, and you can walk out with any product you like. We have a capability to support your dreams.
Fascinating, and welcome back. Thank you, Sigma, for sponsoring this event. And now I will welcome onto the stage Cecilia Neikell, who is the engineering manager at Sigma.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me here today. I am Cecilia Neikell, and I'm here today representing Sigma Connectivity. So we make smart solutions that can be used anywhere, from the bottom of the sea to outer space. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey, how I ended up here, what Sigma Connectivity has done and is doing, and how we ended up in space. But first, a little bit more about Sigma Connectivity. We're a global tech house. We have our headquarters here in Lund, right next to Bricks building, where I stand today. We say that we work on the global market. That means for us that we work with global companies, from the smallest startups with crazy ideas to the big billion-dollar companies that we have in the world. I actually got very inspired by Sofie's story just before. She gave me goosebumps with her story. That's the kind of person and ideas that we meet, and we get to be part of their journey, and that's super inspiring. So we're a complete in-house development company. We have the capability to innovate, create, and develop connected devices and connected solutions. And you will probably notice that today I will have a lot of hardware focus, because that is my background, that is what I do. But we also have all the software part within the company. I have colleagues that work with everything from low-level firmware software devices up until the app and cloud. So we can do a complete device with us. To our help, we have one of Europe's most advanced R&D labs. We can not only design the stuff, we can also build it. So we build prototypes in-house. We put them through environmental testing, lifetime test cycles. We measure them. We have the ability to measure all kind of different radio technologies and electronic signals. And by having everything we need in-house, we're cutting lead times. We learn a lot from the process. We do the tests ourselves, and we work super tight between development and test. And that is how we bring better products to the market faster. So, how did I end up here then? Yeah, I've always been a curious girl. Today I'm a curious lady. I've always asked questions. Why? How? What? Why does it work like this? What does it do? How does it work? And as you understand, I had very patient parents. All those questions took me to Lund University, and I have a Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering. And when I came out of the university, I did understand I got a really good education, but I was humble enough to understand that I did not know much about reality. There was so much more left to learn. And I jumped on a journey. And a little fun fact is that the first job I got was with Sigma, actually. Not Sigma Connectivity, because that was not at all funded by them, but Sigma Technique. So I started as a mechanical engineering consultant, moving around in the region. It took me through heavy truck engines, to filling machines, and eventually to mobile phones. So I landed here in Lund, at the water tower area, close to Ideon, at Eriksson, Sony Eriksson, and Sony. And I was designing parts for consumer electronics. I got the opportunity to travel the world, to support our manufacturers, to support our suppliers. And I learned how to put products on the market in millions, in a super fast pace. I actually say that I kind of grew up in the consumer electronic business. This is where I grew old. I haven't left yet. I've seen the development of components. I've seen how they become smaller, faster, better, more accurate. I've seen how power management develop. I've seen the development of batteries, of the battery technology. I've seen camera technology, how it become really small, and how picture analysis is growing. We have machine learning. It's available today. It's actually what we expect today. And I've seen development of sensors, how they become more accurate, how we can use them, how we get new ideas, how to use the data that we can get. In 2013, I made a full circle. I was back with Sigma, with the Sigma group. When Sigma Connectivity was established, I was part of that. And to be honest, I was probably a little less humble the second time I came back to Sigma. But I was still asking the questions, why, what, and how. Because Sigma Connectivity was, when we started, based on the R&D department, the hardware R&D department from Sony. And what could we do more than mobile phones? That was what we have been doing the last 10, 15 years. How would we utilize the knowledge that we had? And who on earth would ask us to do stuff for them? Well, today I know, 8 years later, we can do a lot of stuff. I was a project manager in the beginning with Sigma, and I've been involved in many different projects and products and met many fantastic people with the most mind-blowing ideas. I've done care systems for elderly. I've done smart IoT cameras for machine learning. I've done smart hooks for public bathrooms. I've done smart home systems, smart home devices, and smart trackers for your wallet, your bag, your keys, whatever you don't want to lose. Just to mention some. What's common for all the products that I've been involved with is that they're smart. That's what we say when they are connected. We bring new technologies into well-known areas, and we always try to package them as small as possible. You might also notice that I don't talk about our customers, and I don't tell you a lot about the products that we do. That is because with Sigma Connectivity, we take confidentiality really serious. Really good in one part, quite boring in another one when you never can tell your family what you're actually doing the bigger part of your day. But that is also part of why it's really cool to be with us, actually. So today, I'm an engineering manager. I have a team of around 20 engineers, and it's with that team, or a part of that team, that Sigma Connectivity and I took the step out into space. Here we go. So let's get back. You know my questions. Why, what, how? What happened with space technology, space industry, and why? Well, when I grew up, space traveling was super specialized and super expensive and available only to the richest countries and a few selected governments. They were challenged by private entrepreneurs in the pace where technology got more accessible. Today we talk about space tourism. We have slogans like space is for everyone. We're aiming to move to Mars. We're talking about moving out heavy industries from Earth. And space rockets, they're moving closer to being airplanes. To be able to do everything we dream of, they need to fly more. They need to fly more times, more hours. They need to be reusable, reliable, and possible to repair. And the journey have started. Today we have space rockets that land on drone ships in the middle of the water. Super cool from my perspective, but we need to go even further. If we look at the satellite industry, during last years, satellites has become smaller, cheaper, more accessible, meaning that more people can send them up into orbit. We don't even send one big satellite. We send constellations. We send big groups of smaller satellites up to get the data that we want. According to European Investment Bank, investments in space will double or have doubled over the last 10 years. And Morgan Stanley think that the industry will grow from $500 billion today to $1,000 billion in 2040. And half of that is driven by satellites only. Well, to enable this, I'd say that we need cost-efficient products. We need faster development cycles. We need higher reliability. And we need lower weight because we need to carry higher payloads to be more efficient. And this is exactly where Sigma Connectivity fits. So, how did me and my team end up in space then? Well, we were challenged. We partnered up with one of Europe's leading space technology companies. They came to us and said, can you bring your ideas into our domain? And we said, whoo, that's scary. That's new to us. But of course, we want to try. So their mindset allowed us to merge two different kinds of experiences into something new. They brought their long experience from space. They know what it takes to send up stuff, the mechanical and thermal stresses at launch, how to shield electronic components from radiation up in space. We brought our functional approach to development, how we think design for manufacturing, design for assembly, how to keep it small, how to challenge everything. And they allowed us to do that. So we had very good collaboration between the teams. In 9 months, we designed and manufactured and built their first product. We made it cost efficient because we decreased their part cost by a factor of 10 by introducing new manufacturing methods. We reduced the assembly time from 2 days to 1 hour by having the mindset of design for assembly from the beginning and also by introducing new connection methods. We made it possible to repair. Again, the mindset of assembly gives you the mindset of disassembly. And by choosing reusable fastening methods, you know, everything is not always good when it comes out of assembly line. Then you can go back, take it apart, take out the bad part, and then reuse all the good parts. We introduced modularity, allowing our customer to be able to build more variants with less unique parts. Less unique parts also gives you more reliability. And we decreased the cost of electronic components by 97%, which is totally mind-blowing. They allowed us to use high-volume commodity components instead of going into space-grade components. And that is how we could take a very big leap in that area. All of this was made possible by the mindset of our customers, inviting us into their area and allowing us to challenge them with our ideas. And the product that we built is currently going through testing with really good results this far. And I look forward and hope to have the product up there soon. So what's next within space technology? Frankly, I don't know. I have no idea. But I'd say that the possibilities are endless. I know that communication and connectivity will be the key for the future. I hope that the focus will also be on sustainability, because everything that we send up, we also need to take care of. We need to reuse, hopefully recycle. I'm sure that the questions why, what, and how will be there. And I definitely hope that I can be part of that journey and search for the answers. And I know for certain that Sweden and Lund and the companies around Ideon have the ability to be part of that journey, because we have the knowledge, we have the experience, we have the curiosity and the technology to be part of that. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Cecilia. Wow. Sigma. It's pretty awesome.
Pretty cool,
all
right?
The way through. How is it leading a group of engineers in such a cool company, doing so cool stuff?
It's fantastic. It's a bit double, not being able to tell what I actually do. But I work with fantastic colleagues, and I do get to meet fantastic people with the craziest ideas. And it's both fun but also super challenging, trying to meet their dreams.
As you're so confidential between all the different customers, of course, but how do you work with, integrating different areas and industries into each other to come up with new innovation? Is that something you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything comes back to the open mindset. If you allow new ideas and you dare to try them, then you also get the leverage. And I mean, we do our projects in-house, the engineers build the experience, and we can bring our knowledge into new areas all the time. And
looking here at the new ESA big project taking space to Lund and so on, can you contribute with helping startups or helping new companies with developing the next technologies for space?
Absolutely. I mean, like Sofie, who gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, me too.
Sigma Connectivity's superpower is to realize dreams and ideas. Yeah. And startups, they bring the dreams and ideas. And if we could merge that, I mean, we have a fantastic opportunity to help there.
Yeah, I was actually there with the Formula Student project when we were launching the electric vehicle.
Yeah.
And I must say, your facilities are actually, for real, very cool. Thank you so much for coming here today.
Thank you, William.
Now, we have seen innovation being engineered and seen how it can be implemented. let's head back into science and back up in space. So our next speaker will shine a light on the risks of digitalizing our entire society and also head back into the science and the space of physics. From the Swedish Institutes of Space Physics, I present to you Peter Wintoft.
Okay, I'm Peter Wintoft from the Swedish Institute of Space Physics, and I'm very happy to be invited here today to talk about something that I'm very interested in and find exciting, but also have consequences for the society. So I can just say a short background about myself. I took my master's degree in Linköping University, and then I came to Lund for my PhD studies in astronomy, and my first approach was into star formation, so that's my background. But then I started working with things more related to Earth and especially space weather. What you see here is the sun and an image of the sun, and you can also see a big loop of mass coming out of the sun, and you should compare that to the size of the Earth. Which is the small blue dot. So this is really huge scales that we are looking at. So shortly about the institute. It's called Institute för rymdfysik in Swedish, so it's Swedish Institute of Space Physics. And we have the head office up in Kiruna, and then we have also offices in Umeå, Uppsala, and here in Lund. And the Lund office was formed in about 1998. So we've been here for some time. So what is behind this, what I call space weather? Well, we have to look at the sun to start with. So the picture to the left shows the sun with these huge loops coming out from the sun. And things that happens on the sun, it's not just radiation, but it's also plasma and magnetic fields. And these can be transported from the sun to the Earth in about 1 to 2 days. And then they start interacting with our protecting magnetic field, and the picture to the right shows this how the magnetic fields around the sun, around the Earth looks like. So this is the connection between the sun, solar wind, and Earth, and that drives space weather. To observe space weather, we need a lot of different instruments, and this just shows some of the both scientific and space weather spacecraft that are currently in mission and planned missions and so on. So there's a huge fleet, and of course NASA is one of the big players, but also ESA has a lot of spacecraft in this system. And I will focus on a couple of these spacecraft here, namely the SOHO spacecraft that was launched in 1995. We have the ACE and Discover spacecraft that measures plasma magnetic fields in the solar wind, and we also have the Solar Dynamics Observatory, or the SDO spacecraft that was launched about 10 years ago. These are really exciting spacecraft and provides a lot of data. And just to show you one of these images, this is an event from 2017, so it's a couple of years ago. And what you see here is the sun, what it looks like for the naked eye, you could say. So we can see the solar surface, and we can see these patches of dark areas which are called sunspots. And the blue little dot here also shows the size of these sunspots compared to the Earth. So this is the image from the Solar Dynamics Observatory, and you can also put them together to movies, and you can see how they rotate with the solar rotation. Then other telescopes on the same spacecraft provides other images, and then we go up into more the hot corona, where the temperatures increase to high levels, several millions of degrees. And the same kind of movie for the same event, you can see the solar rotation, but now you can see much more things happening, where you have this kind of outburst and what we call solar storms in the corona. From the SOHO spacecraft, which is a joint NASA-ESA spacecraft, we get even further out into space, and we can see the faint corona outside the sun. So what you can imagine is the white circle is the sun, and the disk blocks out the strong light from the sun, and then you can see the solar corona. And this is again a movie from the same event. You see September 2017, and you can see these streams of plasma and magnetic fields coming out from the sun. And suddenly you get these ejections of material, which are called coronal mass ejections. And then we have a really big one that happened at September 10-11 about. And you can see all these small particles also. These are actually particles that come from the sun with a very high energy and goes into the camera of the instrument. So suddenly we see a lot more, so to say, stars in this instrument. And spacecraft that use, for example, star trackers to navigate, they will get confused when they get all these particles coming in. We have the images and movies from the sun, but then what's happening between the sun and Earth, we don't really have many measurements, so we rely on simulations. So this is the same event again, but now you can see a simulation of this coronal mass ejection propagating from the sun. So these are the movies to the left, and you can see how they reach the Earth, which is the green dot in this image. And then we can get estimates of when this will arrive at Earth and what the speeds are and so on. And then finally, the same event again. This is what we observed closer to the Earth, where we have much more details. So we can see what's happening in the solar wind, which are the three bottom plots. So on the really bottom of this image here, you can see the solar wind speed, and you can see sudden jumps in the speed. And these are shocks arriving at the Earth. And when they hit the Earth, they will disturb the magnetic field. And this magnetic field will cause various disturbances on Earth. And to the right, there's a plot of these disturbances that we measure on the ground. And it's also related to a disconnection of a transformer in central Sweden. So it's really fascinating that these events coming from the Earth, from the sun, propagate 150 million kilometers and then reach the Earth. We can see these very practical consequences of the solar storm. So this is a picture trying to just describe all the effects that we can expect from space weather. So you have all the kind of technology. You see spacecraft and you see aircrafts, and you can see the power grid and so on. So especially if we look at the electricity grid, we have long cables stretching over long distances, and then about 100 kilometers above us, we have what is known as the ionosphere, where we have electrical currents that flows. And these currents cause variations on the ground, and these will drive currents in power grids, and this is where we get these kind of problems. We also have astronauts, because you saw all the particles that hit the CCD camera. These are actually radiation, so this is particles that can be dangerous to humans in space. So what is the root of all this? Well, it's the solar dynamo, you could say. So inside the sun, we have magnetic fields, and they evolve over time. And this is another telescope, Earth-based telescope, that shows the magnetic fields in yellow and red, but the yellow one is magnetic fields pointing towards us, and the blue one is away from us. And you can see how there's some kind of pattern or organization. And again, if we look at this, you can see the solar rotation. You can see how these patterns rotate with the sun. And then if we take slices of the sun, we can put together to these kind of maps, and then we can run these maps in time. And at the bottom you can see the years from 1980 to 2010. And you can see how this pattern, they disappear, get weaker, and then they become stronger, and then they go back to weaker again. And this is what is known as the solar cycle. So this is the root, is the solar magnetic fields that causes this pattern and also causes the storms. This is an old kind of model of what's going on with the sun. I will not go into the details, but if you look at the top left, it looks like a dipolar field. So that's what you get from a bar magnet. And this is how it all, you can imagine it starting. But the sun rotates, what we say differentially, so it rotates faster around the equator and slower at the poles. So this magnetic field starts winding up. and this means energy. So this energy has to dissipate from the sun, and this is what we see as sunspots, and this is what we see as this coronal mass ejection coming out. And this is go through a cycle with a 22-year magnetic cycle, but if you look on just counting these sunspots, it's an 11-year cycle, and many people know about the sunspot number and the cycles that is, you can see the cycles in the sunspot numbers. And this is showing over the past about 20 years and the predictions for the coming 10 years. So I was involved in this, in the prediction panel in Boulder, Colorado, 2 years ago. And this is a really tricky problem to come up with this kind of prediction. So we were a group of people trying to come up, and this is what we know as the consensus prediction of the next solar cycle. So this is important for planning of future missions and so on. Some other events, March 1989, there was an actually damage on a transformer on the east coast of US. The list on the left just shows a number of examples that happened in Sweden over the years. And one interesting thing is, for example, in May 1921, there was actually a fire in a telegraph station, driven by these currents again. Malmö had a blackout in 2003. We were following this event closely. And again, this is a CME from the sun blasting away, and then we get this very particular effect in Malmö at this case. Christer Fuglesang, he was on spacewalk. Maybe you see the Swedish flag on his astronaut arm there. Again, we have these radiation environments and so on from the coronal mass ejections. So the electricity is, of course, very important to the society. And this is just a graph showing how much the electricity consumption has increased from 1955 until today. And of course, we will, when we get all the electrical cars and so on, the demand on electricity will increase even more. And of course, this is a vulnerability from these space weather effects. Coming now to the ESA. So we have collaborated with ESA for at least, I think, 20 years now on these space weather effects. So right now they are building a network where we contribute with various models and predictions and so on. So this is just showing our contribution. And anyone interested in this can actually go into the ESA site. I have the link down there, and register to look at these, what kind of products and so on are available. And then also I would just want, because machine learning was mentioned here before also, this is also a big part in this, because we have a lot of uncertainties, we have a lot of data, and how to approach that. And machine learning has really grown over the 5-10 years with a lot of new models and approaches. And last week I was involved in this machine learning conference. It was organized in Boulder, Colorado, but it was completely online, which is a pity because it's always nice to meet people and have, these discussions. But it's really exciting. So it was for a whole week, and there's a lot of interesting ideas. But it was also exciting is that in 1993 we organized a conference here in Lund. Exactly on these topics with AI. We call it artificial intelligence in solar terrestrial physics, but this is now more that goes into the machine learning. So there's really a long history of these kind of approaches here in Lund. And finally, I just want to say that we keep a website up to keep this kind of space weather information. We will plan to develop it further. The other point with space weather is this really interesting overlap that we need research. We really rely on all these spacecraft and so on. But we need development, so that goes into like software development and instrument developments and so on. And then we also have the users, which is really important. And this intersection between these three is what I define as space weather. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. Very interesting.
Thank you.
I can imagine why you are passionate about this. Now, we are digitizing our society rapidly. And I can see, obviously, there's a risk with doing that. What can we do about it?
Well, I think, I mean, one of the bigger risks that one can see on society is, I mean, this threat to possible effects on the power grid operation, because everything is dependent on electricity. If electricity goes, everything stops. And if it goes for a long time, it becomes very critical to the society. Of course, these kind of events are very rare also. We should be aware of that. We don't see that many events, and they're very rare, but when they happen, they can have big consequences. So what we are doing on our side, of course, is to monitor the sun all the time, to try to develop our research and understand what is going on, and trying to make some kind of predictions and warning. But everything is there's a large, uncertainties in all this, because lack of understanding, but also lack of data. But this is, a continuous progress that's going on. And I mean, there's been estimates, there's been many reports trying to estimate, especially again on the power grid, if there are major blackouts. And for Swedish concerns, they talk about somewhere between 10 and 100 million, 10 to the 100 billion Swedish kronor, if this is a really big event. So I think these large-scale infrastructures, that's, the power grid and so on. But then we have all the spacecraft, because the spacecraft also...
stuff on the planet we can repair, perhaps.
Yes, exactly.
Up in space is more difficult.
Yes, exactly. So this is also a topic that is big for satellite operators. And but when you go into the satellite operators, there are, of course, there's competition in space also. So it's not always easy to get this kind of information, what's going wrong with different spacecraft and so on. So it's...
Is there a lack of transparency, which would be more beneficial for everyone if we could share?
For science and research, of course. If everything is open, it's of course a benefit. But it's not. That's not the case, because again, you have to think about the competition that goes on and so on.
Yeah.
So
we have for quite a long time been digitizing all of our products, going to mobile phones, to computers, to everything. That's been going on for a while. But now we're digitizing basically all services in the entire society and how it works. And the new trend is making digital twins of products, so that we can, monitor and understand how things are used by just building a twin digitally. Perhaps, is there a viable solution by building mechanical and going back to build mechanical twins or physical twins out of digital solutions, just to prepare ourselves for a solar storm?
Yeah, everything that you can, in this again, understanding, if you can build this kind of models or twins and so on, of course, that would be very useful.
Is it being done?
I don't know really.
Or are we running straight into digitization, and do we protect ourselves for these storms today at all?
There's a lot of research and going on internationally. So especially like NASA, NOAA, ESA, and so on. They're very well aware of this, and we are building networks and infrastructures to tackle it. And there's a lot of it. It's not just for the society, it's these big events that are important. But then we have all these small nuances also, which affects everyday operation. So it's not just the big events that I'm talking about today, but it's also these smaller events, because they will affect communication, they will affect GPS. And then if you go into this, space travel business, if we want to travel to Mars, astronaut will be much more exposed to this radiation than, for example, around at the International Space Station, because at the International Space Station, it's still inside a protective magnetic field from the Earth. But once we go outside to Mars and so on, it's a completely different environment, and that's a long journey.
It's really fascinating. Thank you very much for coming here today and sharing the risks, but also the potentials of going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It has really been a pleasure, and increased monitoring and data generation is being done by shooting up a lot of satellites into orbit. But how can we really utilize all the data that is being generated? Our next speaker comes all the way from the Research Institute of Sweden that will dig deeper into this. Our next speaker is Ann-Christin Uusitalo Eriksson.
So, time for me to start, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and to invite me. I will present the Swedish Space Data Lab during this session. Let me see. But first, very short about me. Let me see how to, so I have a cross-domain background, it's healthcare, it's telecom, and also I worked with geographical information systems before starting at RISE. And starting at RISE 2019, I was directly involved in the space data domain. So I don't have so many years of experience here. Since that first months at RISE, we got this Vinnova project to build a blueprint of the Swedish Space Data Lab. So it started for RISE at that time as well. It's a Vinnova finance project that is ending now, 2021, this summer. Time flies when you have fun at work. Last year, I spent a lot of time to make a deal with the Swedish National Space Agency to have a long-term commitment and a cooperation agreement. So we settled that for kind of now and a couple of years ahead. So why are we working with Space Data Lab? Well, the need for environmental data from space is really growing, and we have seen during these 2 years that the interest is huge from a lot of stakeholders. And the example of use cases are enormous in again, cross domains, but especially when it comes to climate adaptation, it's forestry, it's drought, it's heat, water level flows. Do I need to? Maybe this is better. And our mission is really to use and enable data-driven innovation for the benefit of the society, and do this by contributing with AI-based decision support. And of course, a lot of the goals of Agenda 2030 we can address here. So why now? Well, there are some enablers that I think is very important why we are building the Space Data Lab now. And the first one is, of course, the ESA Copernicus program. It's full, it's free, and it's an open access to data. And I understand that they really have this long-term commitment. They sent up the first Sentinel-1. We have been working a lot with Sentinel-2. I think maybe Sentinel-6 is sent out, and there is a long-term commitment to continue this program. So this is a real enabler. And also, it's exploding the amount of data that can be collected and used from many stakeholders. Another enabler is a concept called Open Data Cube, and it was initially worked with in Australia by an Australian geoscience community. And now it is used not only in Australia, but also in the Swiss Data Cube. There is something called Digital Earth Africa. It's used in Brazil and now also in Sweden by us. And just trying a little bit to explain what is a data cube. Well, if you think of a map, two-dimensional, and you add trends or actually time, this makes up a cube of data. Or if you take the dimensional map and you add frequencies that you can have from, for example, Sentinel-2, different frequencies, you can build this cube as well. And of course, combinations of both time and frequency. And this open data cube concept allows us, for example, to build on top of the popular Python libraries. It allows us to make time series analysis quite easy. It could be used to connect to existing GIS software and so on. And GIS is Geographical Information Systems. And it helps to organize the data from various satellites. The third enabler is that when you have these huge amounts of data and you have very high demands on compute power, it's good to have a data center. And RISE has a data center called ICE. It's located in Sweden, in the Facebook city of Sweden. And it's fully owned by RISE, and it's full control of where the data is located. Also, AI, that's a fourth enabler. AI is exploding and it's used in every domain. And at RISE, we are working a lot with AI. So this is just a picture of what is the overview of AI at RISE. So competence in this area is a very important enabler. So to summarize then, you have the Copernicus program with satellites and the data. You have the Open Data Cube that sort, arrange, structure the data, and you have compute power and storage. You have the capability also to merge with other data sets. There is also, just to mention, there is some concept called open Earth observation that we are looking at, and we are about to start a pre-study on that could be built on top of the Open Data Cube to make the data ready for use in AI applications and services. And all of this, of course, tailored for Sweden. That's the very idea of the Swedish Space Data Lab. It's over Sweden, it's Swedish coordinate systems and other things specific for Sweden. Tobias Edman is the one of the initiative takers. He works at the Swedish National Space Agency, and he said this a year ago or something like that. A national space data lab contributes in many ways to innovation and social benefits for the planet's best. With open source and open data, services and applications can be shared. An analysis that is produced for agriculture can be used for new information for forestry or to analyze changes on the Bear Mountains or in the open sea. So just a saying that summarizes it all. I will go through in the end of this presentation a bunch of use cases. But first, something short about how we have worked up until now during these 2 years. Most important thing has been this use case drive to really have the use case owners as part of pilot projects and do this iteratively. It's still a blueprint of a national space data lab, and we are continuing to build this, but the use case owners are so important. The use case owners are in all these areas, cross-domain, but example, connecting to the Agenda 2030, clean water, infrastructure, of course, is important here, sustainable communities, climate action, life below and on land. So we're meeting a lot of those goals. Then you understand that the way of working is collaboration. We do this for the best of Sweden, is Sweden AB. That is our common goal. And the initial partners, as I hope I said, was the Space Agency in Sweden and RISE and AI Sweden and the Luleå Technical University and the AI group at the university. And other stakeholders are lots of authorities, some of them already using space data. I think, for example, the Skogsstyrelsen, Forest Authority, have been very early on this. But I mean, this is 15, I think there are 18 now in the community in Sweden working or have the needs for Copernicus data and working together in Europe with ESA then. Then we have the funding organizations. Of course, you need funding from the beginning. Vinnova was a very important startup, and Space Agency is now moving this forward in a very good way. And enablers, I've already talked about that. To end my presentation then, I'm trying to keep track of time here. Use case examples. I have 10 of them now. So William, stop me when you think my time is out.
Go ahead.
Maybe I can show all the 10 pages. But to start with, there is a landing page under construction for the Space Data Lab, spacedataLab.se. And here we are trying to connect the purpose, the mission, but also if you go to the projects menu, you get this pilot information. At least you get the timeline, who has financed it, because every pilot is adding money into this ecosystem, and who has been the partners. And for example, then, if we take the first one, we at RISE were also the pilot partner working with AI together with the County Administrative Board of Västmanland. And it was about growth in Mälardalen, and it was 2019. SMHI funded both this and also the next one that was about the water levels in Vänern. Another county administrative board, there are many of them in Sweden. This was Västra Götaland. The pilot partner was Metria, doing most of the work, and they use this to try to reduce overgrowth of beaches, looking at trends, monitor shorelines. And then we come to 2020, and this one started, I think, summer 2020, last summer. And it was, again, the County Administrative Board, Västerbotten. And they wanted to look at marine habitats and use space data for that. And they are doing it together with a partner in Denmark, DHI. And this is about to end now, this pilot. As this pilot as well, that has been driven in parallel, it's SMHI that is both funding this and running this. They want to use Pytrol for data management and analysis. So that's the focus of this pilot. Pilot 5, AI for Good, not started yet. We'll see if that will happen. But Pilot 6 is an API. This is a very important pilot for many of the users, because we need an API to make it easy for them to use the Space Data Lab. And in this pilot, we are also preparing for the Open Earth Observation pre-study. Pilot 7, I think I will make the time here. Pilot 7 is about water dynamics, and it's the Environmental Protection Agency. They have this Agenda for Landskapet project since a couple of years ago, and they are covering Sweden. It's called Nationella Marktäckerdata, to enable water dynamics in this case. This is the pilot for that. And this is the first pilot that we also use Sentinel-1, because we have that now. We started with Sentinel-2, but now we have Sentinel-1 as well. And Pilot 8, agriculture, a common joint project together with the Agriculture Board of Sweden. And in this project, we also have been part as an AI competence organization. Common agriculture policy. This is connected to EU needs from the Agriculture Board. Pilot 9, AI shallow water, just about to start. It's about change analysis in coastal zones, to be able to plan spatial and also follow up and see, does it looks from above as we think it is. And this is the Space Agency, RISE, and Luleå Technical University in joint project here. This is the ones that are about to start or have been running. We also have a 10th one in the backlog, and that is Sveriges geologiska undersökning, SGU, I don't know the English name here. together with Havs- och vattenmyndigheten, they are part of a lot of these water-based pilots as well. So that's kind of, let's see here. That's kind of what I would like to present here, and you can go to the spacedatalab.se or you can go to ri.se to look specifically on different projects. And thanks for having this opportunity to present this for you.
Oh, thank you, Ann-Christin. It's super interesting all the way through. How long have you been working at RISE and in this industry in space?
Well, I started 2019 at RISE, but before that I worked a couple of years at Metria. And Metria is working with geographical information systems. I was a department manager there, not directly involved in the parts of Metria that work with satellite data, but I get in contact with it then. So it's a couple of years now, not so long.
Thank you. But I have one question. We are currently seeing a global space race, introducing new countries when now the prices drop, inviting more players. We have a few, let's say, space superpowers already putting technology on Mars. Is Sweden keeping up? Is Sweden AB part of the game? How do we remain competitive?
I think we have been lacking a little bit behind in some areas. I think some digitalization areas, I would say, but we are really trying to go again, so to speak. And a success factor here is really to work together. An example is AI Sweden, that is really getting together all of Sweden in a partnership to trying to raise the AI speed in Sweden. And it's the same here, the space data and that industry, we need to collaborate. We're not that big country. So that's an important success factor. I can't say exactly where we are towards other countries, but I think we understand that we need to have more funding, so to say. Speaking frankly, because there we are lagging behind compared to other Nordic countries, for example.
Funding space.
Funding for space industry. This is how I understand it. I'm sure there are people in this audience that knows much more about this, but I understand that other Nordic countries are investing more in the space industry than we are.
Yeah, but this is interesting. You saw this gap in the market, and you saw that Sweden have to take more, make more progress in the space. And you're almost starting a startup within the public space, right? How's that going? How's that working out?
I think it's working out well. There are challenges, of course, and one challenge is the long-term thinking. Sometimes Sweden is working, the culture is silos and projects. But here you need to think long-term, very long-term, for companies to want to invest and so on. And I think more and more of the community and the stakeholders in Sweden understands that we can't work only project-wise, start a project and end it, and then what happens then? You need some kind of taking care of all the projects. You need to have a fundament, and the space agency understands that that's why you have this at least 4 years collaboration agreement with them to be able to take care of what is coming out from the Vinnova project now this summer.
Yeah, that's that's interesting. We're also in my startup funded by Vinnova, and they do only support projects, as you say. Should we start talking about funding companies rather than only projects?
Well, it's always the funding goes to companies or authorities, so there is always partners into this that get the money. But what I think that we need to make this really long-term strategic plan and do it together, and there need to be a base funding. And in this area, I think it's needed to come from the European or national Swedish authorities. You need the base there. for the companies to being able to commercialize this.
I have one short final question. As you take on projects, what is your dream project to take in?
My dream project, that would be to send an, I said I had a telecom background, and when I started RISE, we talked about putting an edge node in a satellite, kind of a mini data center in space. That would be a dream project. Combine data management, but do it in space, close to this, or in the satellites.
That's I really hope you get that project going.
Yeah, to really kind of connect, someone said earlier, to connect Earth and space.
Yes.
To see it as one ecosystem. That would be very interesting to work with such projects, because this project is kind of, satellite is looking at the globe, at the Earth, and we use that data.
And you are really doing that, inviting all of these projects and making them happen. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing. And thank you for coming here today.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is really taking all of this data generated from space and applying them here to Earth. So I would like to invite you to the stage, Robert Schmitt.
Hi, my name is Robert. I'm the founder and CEO of Vultus, and our mission is to eliminate waste in farming. Farming is under a lot of pressure. The global population is expected to grow to roughly 10 billion people by the year 2050, and this means that there's a really rising demand for food. The demand for food is growing much faster than the supply of food, and this means every year more and more people are undernourished and don't have enough food to satisfy their diets. Right now, this number is about 821 million people, according to UN, but it's growing every year. We need to find methods to increase food supply, and the two main methods we've used in the past has been to shovel forests. A good example of this is what we're doing in the Amazon forest, or applying more nitrogen fertilizers. But both these things are not really the best things for the planet, and we really need to find ways to increase food production without further digging ourselves in a hole in terms of the climate crisis. So we see nitrogen as really kind of the key contributor here, since nitrogen is responsible for roughly half the food production in terms of its impact on food. Fertilizers and nitrogen fertilizers are really heavily misused, so we need to find ways to use them more effectively. Because right now, farmers basically guesstimate how much fertilizers they're going to apply, where they should apply them in the field, and when they should spread them in the season. This results in about 55% of all the nitrogen fertilizers applied not going into the plants, but instead becoming environmental pollutants. This leads to a lot of environmental degradation, but also a lot of problems with food quality, as well as big costs for the farmers. We're looking at addressing this problem by providing farmers with precise satellite recommendations that integrate with existing machinery that they're using and tells the farmer how much fertilizer they should apply, where they should apply it in the field, and when in the season. This helps farmers save roughly a third of their nitrogen used, which means you can produce more food using less chemicals, which has very positive impacts on the margins and the yields of the production, but also the food quality of the end produce. We're doing this by leveraging satellite data to measure different types of biophysical properties in the field. So we can measure things using both multispectral and microwave analysis. We measure things like the soil and plant nutrients, the current and historical yields, as well as the plant health and biomass of the plants. With these different biophysical properties, we then use to calculate the fertilization needs and how that varies across the field and create a fertilizer strategy together with the farmer automatically. This can then be implemented into the field using variable rate equipment that's actually guided by satellites and helps the farmer, as they're driving across the field, to automatically apply the right amount of fertilizer at the right part of the field at the right time of the season. And we're not building this just for the farmers we're working with, but we're building this as an open infrastructure meant to really accelerate the digitalization and adoption of precision agriculture. So farming is going digital very rapidly. We see, a lot of different digital workflows and platforms being opened up, and farmers are using these more and more, and they're oftentimes being mandated in terms of subsidy frameworks. So we're basically integrating all our services into those platforms so that the farmers can use the platforms they're comfortable with and directly get access to the best-in-class recommendations. So we're something like a Stripe for fertilization. And this means we can really scale much more rapidly, since we only have to worry about those types of integrations. It means we can also scale the impact of these services. We are currently in the phase of verifying all the algorithms recommendations, and we're about to really scale this up more towards next year, but we already have significant traction from our early customers. We're delivering roughly 50,000 analyses per month, and this is a number we're expecting to grow significantly as we onboard more customers, and we're getting closer to scale up. Why we see this as something which is really, really important is kind of what I mentioned before, with we need to really make farming sustainable. So nitrogen is a really key contributor to greenhouse gas emissions from food production, because the nitrogen that doesn't get taken up by the plant, it either goes into waterways and creates algal blooms and acidification, or it becomes nitrous oxide, which is a greenhouse gas roughly 300 times more potent than CO2. So nitrogen is responsible for a big part of the emissions from food production, and so using it more wisely is really, really important. It's also responsible for roughly, half the food production, just the application of nitrogen fertilizers. So it's also a key contributor to actually solving this dilemma of both increasing food production as well as making it more sustainable. So we're really excited about doing that, and the only way we could do that is because we have access to satellite data. And this is something which is really improving very rapidly. We see the amount of satellite data being available really growing exponentially. In the last few years, it's grown significantly, but we see a lot of new large constellations of satellites being launched, which means that we're going to have a big capacity increase in the availability of the type of data that we need to make this type of analysis. For example, we're going to have more high-resolution data more frequently. We're also going to have much more specific spectral bands. And we're excited about this because it allows us to make our recommendations more accurate, but it also allows us to measure new things about the fields and develop new use cases that previously weren't possible. Some of these might include things like detecting specific types of pests in the field, such as diseases or fungi. And we see a lot of potential just in our own setting, as well as for other companies to develop things and to make farming more sustainable with use of these technologies. Where we see this is going is that we're trying to really build kind of the key building blocks for precision agriculture to really build the foundation for this new sector. We're hoping to build a larger and larger community around our products, and the more usage we're getting from our services, the better our algorithms become, as we're getting more data to train our algorithms. We see a lot of interest and demand for technologies that can make farming more sustainable for many reasons. It's both helping farmers to stay more competitive in this global market, but it also, there's a lot of pressures from regulators to, for example, reduce the amount of fertilizers being applied, as well as large new subsidy frameworks actually targeted towards sustainability. So for example, EU is at the end of this year rolling out the 58 billion euro farm sustainability subsidy framework, which will really put a lot of pressure and create a lot of incentives to adopt sustainable farming practices. So we're really, really excited about developing the infrastructure to enable and accelerate this transition towards a farming with less waste. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really, really interesting. So now we're seeing how we can use the data that is generated all the way up from space to making sustainable solutions here on Earth. But you have been growing since 2016, growing up to more than 20 people, and your background is actually as a dropout law student. What drives you and what made you go into this field here?
Yeah, so what really interests me is trying to solve large problems with the use of technology, and problems that are pressing and that are hopefully can make an impact. So I mean that's the main reason why I started Vultus and thereafter dropped out, and I think that's also why we have the strategy we have and why we're doing the things we're doing.
super interesting. You also must feel the champagne versus fetus story of starting your own startup. How's the journey been so far?
I mean, there's certainly been a lot of ups and downs. I think it's definitely not a linear journey, but I think it's been very interesting. I mean, learned a lot through the process, and yeah, I think I'm very excited about continuing to build things in this direction. Hopefully to help improve agriculture, but thereafter also other things as well.
Yeah, there are some enablers and barriers for more data generations. What we were talking about earlier about new satellites being launched into space. What are these programs all about?
Yeah, so I mean, some of these programs relate to, for example, government bodies and so forth that are launching new satellites. But I think what we're seeing now is really the majority of these new constellations coming from commercial actors. And there's lots of different types of constellations for different use cases. What we're focused on is like the niche of Earth observation, and there you have a lot of different constellations for measuring different things about the land use. You can measure different things about what's happening on Earth and so forth. Yeah, so I mean, the different constellations have different kind of use cases, but what we're seeing is that the barriers are dropping really rapidly. I mean, launching this is becoming much cheaper. Also, something you can do much faster, and it's now available for students to start launching and building their own satellites, as well as small startups to do that. And we see also the funding available for space companies is growing very rapidly. I mean, if you kind of take a graph of the space funding, commercial space funding, I mean, it's just almost a straight line up.
Does that apply also to Sweden? Or, because we heard earlier, the lack of resources in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not sure so much about the exactly, I know there's a space sector in Sweden. I'm not sure, how widely funded that one has been. I know, for example, in Finland, there's a company called ISI. I mean, they received a lot of funding, and it's specifically Earth observation satellites using microwave data. So yeah, I mean, I think if there are companies building things in Sweden, I think they will, get access to funding. I think most of these sort of funding markets are global and international. We see a lot of, for example, venture funds that are based maybe in UK or in US or something like that, but they're investing worldwide because we see really space as a, you get data from all across the world. The use cases are global, and it's you're measuring the same things everywhere. So I think really the capital markets as well as the use cases are in most cases global.
Yeah, and also the use cases. Can you use the same technology that you're developing for other verticals as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of what we're doing right now with fertilization is quite specific to agriculture and crop production. But in general, kind of the data we're using, I mean, it can be used for many other things. A good example is we have a forest company that's using our analysis of kind of where there's biomass to basically check, if things have been planted and when things have been harvested and so forth. So, for example, forestry is another use case. There's also, other types of land management things you can do with this type of technology. And in general, the type of data is very widely useful for, things relating to land use. But, what we're building specifically is quite targeted to fertilization for crop production.
Cool. What do you see are the enablers coming here with space to Lund through ESA BIC and other drivers?
Yeah, I mean, I think having access to this, I mean, right now the data we're using is from the European Space Agency and NASA, and it's free data, and there's a lot of tools that are being developed and built. And I think, making that more public and showing and showcasing that you can actually build with space data and you can build real applications with that. I think that's, I think there's a lot of potential in that, and we hope that continues and that there will be more projects building in this direction.
To segue over to our next guest, we are launching a lot of satellites up there. What is your ideal state of moving into space in a sustainable manner?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly something we should think about. I think, if we, let's say, every year increasing the amount of satellites launched by 50%, eventually it's going to be a huge amount of satellites, and it already is a large amount of satellites. So I think thinking about ways to dispose of those satellites and also making sure that things don't crash and so forth, I think that's certainly something we need to address because it's if you launch like SpaceX just launched like 3,000 satellites in a year. I mean that's it's a lot of satellites, and that is the answer I'm looking for actually. So thank you so much, Robert, for coming here today and presenting.
Yep, thank you.
And now we are going global and actually looking of how can we move into space in a sustainable manner. How do we go up there without causing all of the debris and all of the waste that we're currently launching up into space? So this person is probably one of the most experienced people in the field of space. And so I want to welcome to you Chris Blackerby.
Hi, I think I'm on.
You are
hey,
on.
William, am I on to get ready to go?
You are ready to go.
All right. I'm sorry I'm not there to share the stage. When you say I'm one of the most experienced, that kind of sounds like I'm one of the oldest. So I guess that's okay. Hey, everyone. I'm Chris Blackerby. I'm coming to you from Tokyo, Japan. And again, I wish I could be there with all those raised hands on the stage. As was mentioned just now, I work on the space sustainability. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and about what we're doing as a company here at Astroscale. I don't have a slide deck, so I'll just I'll talk through a few things and maybe reference these satellites that are behind me as well as I'm talking. I have been in the space industry for about 20 years. Was with NASA for a long time, first in Washington, D.C., working on international relations, and then came over to Japan to be the NASA attaché here at the U.S. Embassy in Japan about 8 years ago. And so almost 9. So I worked here for about 5 years as the attaché, and then stayed on here in Japan to become COO of Astroscale. As far as what we're trying to do, we're trying to solve this space debris problem that was just talked about with the last speaker. It's incredibly important. I was listening to all of the speakers here today, and everybody is talking about the importance of satellite data to life on Earth, talking about the sustainability of life here on Earth being dependent on satellite data. We're talking about communications. We're talking about farming, land use, sea level rise. All of the decisions we're making about that are informed by satellites in orbit, as so many of the speakers talked about today. So what we're here to do is to make sure that that data remains sustainable. And so here at Astroscale, we're focused on removing current debris from orbit. We're focused on preparing satellites for when they launch so that they can be removed easier. The last speaker and William were just talking about how there's so many satellites that are going to be launched, SpaceX and so many others putting up constellations of satellites. We want to make sure that when those satellites end their life, or if they fail in orbit, we can go up and reliably pull them down. So let's prepare them to be removed when they launch. And then we're also focused on fixing satellites in orbit, looking at the geo orbit and extending the life of satellites. So we have another arm that's focused on that. So I think we all know here, as the speakers have said, and as the audience probably recognizes, the orbital environment is just another natural resource. And we need to protect it the same way we're protecting terrestrial resources. And so that's what Astroscale is focused on. We're a company that is now in 5 countries, US, England, Israel, Japan, and Singapore. We have about 200 people, and we've raised about $190 million. And we have one mission in orbit right now that's going to be testing out the technology for debris capture, and we have several others that are in work. We had an announcement just yesterday from the UK where we signed an agreement with the UK Space Agency, ESA, and OneWeb to move forward on a mission where we're studying multiple debris removals, where we go up and don't just grab one piece of debris, we grab multiple pieces of debris. So I'll stop now. I think William and I are just going to talk a little bit on some questions and have a little conversation on this. But bottom line is we're here to focus on making sure that all of those speakers before me that are utilizing that satellite data for us on Earth, that they can continue to use it sustainably going forward, because it's getting crowded up there.
It is. Thank you so much. It's already fascinating. And I've never really been in the space field, but talking to you a few days ago, I mean, this is my new passion. I mean, I'm come from the circular economy, looking on how to recycling batteries, how to go to make, you know, this electrification of Earth sustainable, and talking to you saying, how can we make space sustainable? It's just fascinating. How did you come about this problem and solution, and how long have you been in working on this problem, really?
Yeah, it is. So first of all, I'm glad that you're in. My logo is backwards. I don't know if you can see it, but it says Space Sweeper. So we'll bring you on as an honorary Space Sweeper.
It's from the right way from here, just so you know. So,
good. It looks, so you see the right Space Sweeper. So you're on as an honorary Space Sweeper. I love the interest. We are always looking for more people to get interested in orbital sustainability. As for the company, it was started about 8 years ago now by a single individual, a Japanese guy who was living in Singapore, and he was interested in space. He didn't really have a space background, but interested in space and looking to solve a big problem in space and apply a startup solution to this problem. So there were a lot of people talking about space debris. There were institutional research looking at how we might solve it, but no one was looking at it from a commercial perspective. Can a company really come in and apply commercial sensibilities to this as a business? Now, when the company started, he had a lot of detractors or people who questioned whether this was viable. Understandably.
I also wonder.
Yeah, right. It makes sense to wonder. Because the questions around technology, it's really hard to approach a satellite in space and grab onto it. Questions around policy. This is a orbital commons. Nobody owns the orbital environment. So how do you compel anybody to do anything to bring their trash down? There's obviously the commercial issues, who pays for all of this stuff. And so those are all of the main questions that people were asking him 8 years ago, and people are still asking it. But where we are is we're moving towards solving it. The amount of discussion about this issue globally has increased so much. Even in the 3.5 years that I've been part of the company, we have seen such volume increase in people talking about this. Even when he started the company, and even when I joined, we really didn't have any competition. Now we do. Now there's several other companies out there that are looking to do the same thing. So we see that there has been a steady climb in number one, acceptance that something has to be done. Number two, that governments and policymakers need to get involved. That commercial companies are going to have to start investing in making it happen, and that there's actually going to be a business case to actually work on this debris removal and satellite servicing.
First of all, thank you for inviting me to the Space Sweepers. Investors are usually asking when and how we're going international, but we're going straight to space. So that's perfect. No, but when the company was launched, it must have been one idea and then going on for 8 years, which is such a visionary goal. How has it been, developed, or perhaps how has the idea changed over the years? Has it?
It has a bit, William. It's the basic bottom line theme of orbital sustainability hasn't changed.
Clean up space.
That was there. Yeah, cleaning up space, making sure that all of those satellites that were referred to in the earlier presentations are able to safely as possible provide the data to us. That basic concept hasn't changed. Some of the things that have changed a bit was the initial concept was going to just be removing debris that's currently in orbit, going up and grabbing a failed satellite or an upper stage rocket body or some piece of debris and bringing it down. What's shifted a little bit is the rise of the large constellations that was referenced earlier. In the last 8 years or so, we've seen SpaceX, OneWeb, Amazon Kuiper, Telesat, all of these companies talking about launching hundreds or thousands of satellites into space. So where we shifted a little bit a few years ago is saying, well, let's start working with those commercial companies to prepare them to be removed if they fail or at the end of their life. And so OneWeb is an example of a company that's starting to do that. All of the OneWeb satellites that launch now have a plate on them that has a ferromagnetic material that can be attached to with a magnet.
No way.
And that's exactly the technology that we're testing on our mission that's currently in orbit.
Thinking like designed for recycling or designed for going back to Earth from the very beginning is like almost goosebumps. But you just launched your first satellite on March 22nd. Congratulations. That's a big deal.
Thank you.
Big step.
Thank you.
How is it technically working? What's the deal with the pilot project?
So it's doing well. You can see it's the lead satellite in my background here, and it's called ELSA-D, End of Life Services by Astroscale demonstration. And what we're doing with this one is you can see there's 2 satellites stacked together. And the smaller satellite is our client. And that's a stand-in for a piece of debris. And the larger satellite is our servicer. That's where the real the payload is and the capability is. What we're going to do, we haven't done it yet. Right now, this satellite is in orbit. We've gone through initial checkouts. We're now preparing to do some demonstrations. And what we're going to do starting later this summer is we will separate those 2 satellites in orbit. Now, the smaller satellite has a plate on it, just very similar to the one that OneWeb has on their satellites with a ferromagnetic surface on it. And so we'll separate them, and then several different times we'll slide in with the larger servicing satellite and connect to it. We'll do at one point, we'll make the smaller satellite tumble. Debris in space is not necessarily stable. A lot of it is tumbling. So we need to be able to show that we have the capability to grab a tumbling object and stabilize it. And so we're going to circle around that tumbling piece of debris, find the plate, and slide in and capture it. And we're going to do a couple of different demonstrations that will prove out the technology that we think will be necessary for governments and commercial customers to use us.
Looking back today and also into the future, I have 2 questions. The roadmap for Astroscale, when is this going to, when is space clean, so to say, or in order? And also the second follow-up question here is, looking back on the very first speaker, space cities on the moon and cities on Mars and moving into space. When is that happening?
So the first question is very much in line with what we're doing now. The second question is a little farther afield, and maybe I can harken back to my NASA days to think about that deeper exploration question. For the first one, space will always have things in orbit. It'll never be perfectly clean, and that's not our end goal. Our end goal is not to see a pristine space environment. There's lots of small pieces of debris that we can't pick up. But what we would like to be is we would like to be the road service of space. And we would like that by the end of this decade, we don't want there to be a news story every time we launch a satellite. Right now, this is a big news story. We signed this contract a couple of days ago to develop this research. We launched this satellite 2 months ago. 5 years from now, 8 years from now, it's going to be normal. Nobody pays attention when a tow truck comes and picks up a car on the side of the road and takes it back to be repaired. Nobody pays attention when a mechanic goes and fixes up a car so it can continue going. There's not a news story in global news when that happens. That's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for a point where in the near future where we can proceed, we can do an operation, and it's just like, well, of course they did. Why would you want to waste that satellite? Why would you want to leave that debris up there? And that's the future that we're aiming for. As to your second question, yeah, that's coming. I mean, it's down the line, but there will be people on the moon. On Mars, it's a little farther away, literally and figuratively, time and distance-wise, it's a little farther away, but it'll be there. And all of the capabilities actually that we're using and developing now can be used in that exploration as well. We're already looking at cislunar orbit as a possible location for future satellite servicing and capture capabilities. So all applicable going forward, years, decades, and centuries.
Chris, it's been a real pleasure talking to you and getting to know you in these recent days. And thank you for being a visionary, and thank you for really inspiring me and obviously many others as well. So and thank you for coming here today.
Thanks, and thanks again for having me. And hopefully I can be there in person next time.
You sure will. Okay, all the best.
Take care, all.
Now, what has happened here? What's going on? Mia, as our last speaker for this morning.
Hi.
What's going on?
Well, this is actually, sometimes you need to be taking all these visions from space and from whatever future we can imagine and just pull down to a concrete challenge that you actually can meet and work on.
So these are problems.
So these are the problems, the challenges, or some of them, because there are so many left to be solved. But these are some of the challenges based on the global agenda, what we heard here today, and our vision is that this is the challenge wall, that it will be the physical presence of the challenges that we still hasn't gotten their innovation, that we still have to ponder about and come together to solve. And here are only some of the challenges. And I actually had to write down a few.
I was just wondering, you must have heard a lot.
From the day listening to all these great speakers and scientists. This is one, for example, how do we really utilize the natural resources in space? Both, in a sustainable way and both in space and on Earth. So that goes right up here. How do we do that? And then another one I had here, I think we need a warning system to cover and warn about the sunstorms that really affects our electricity system. And they were thinking about, should we use machine learning? They're still thinking about that. We need to solve that. And are we actually having open data enough? And can we, in the future, create a weather control, not only here on Earth, but up in space? That goes here.
Mm-hmm.
So. And the last one, just have one more. How do we bring all citizens, everyone listening here, and everyone we know on Earth, into innovating both for the society on Earth and in space? And why do I think like this? So that goes there. I think after this day, we all can agree, I'm sure you're agreeing, that space suddenly feels much more close to Earth.
It's so close now.
than we could imagine before. And the challenges are almost the same. There's just bigger challenges, and they're really connected. So when we innovate here, we also have to think of space and how we do that, and vice versa. So that's my feeling of this day, and listen to all these inspirational speakers and scientists and tech developers and tech entrepreneurs. When we come together like this, the feeling is that we're really strong. It feels completely doable, right?
I mean, clean up space is not a crazy idea.
No, it's not even a crazy idea anymore. So I'm really proud of this day, and I'm proud of everyone that's contributed, and that includes you, William.
I'm just super happy to be here.
Yeah,
It's a lot of
but
fun.
you're also working with the sustainability here on Earth, like storing and reusing electrical car batteries so that we can have a more sustainable future. And you heard that's exactly what's needed in space. So that makes the opportunity so much more.
Yeah, it brings it really removes all limits.
Yeah. So the sky is not the limit.
Right.
Are you going to say that?
I was about to.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much covers the day up. What's your final
No, but it's
impression?
very similar. I'm just thrilled. I've got so much energy and thinking like the problems are so obvious and the solutions are there, and it brings me to problems, solutions. Are there any other companies in the afternoon that we can meet with solutions?
There are actually. So we have those 400 companies here at Ideon, and some of them, some of the most exciting ones, you can already meet in this afternoon, and you probably find the link on our. If you go to the LinkedIn page that we have, the links are all there. Just go in and have a view of what kind of companies you could visit. And of course, there are more. So on our website, you could also find all our companies. And well, with that,
I think we are through.
I think we're through. I think it's lunchtime.
And then we'll see people back to meet Devel, Embegu Solar, Energy, Opticon, Sensitive, BioGaia, and Energize.
Yes.
So welcome back to that in the afternoon. And for now, thank you so much.
Thank you for taking us through this journey.
My pleasure.
Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.